right, that was Take Me Out to the Ball Game. Take Me Out to the Ball Game with good old Harry Carey on this baseball-less Tuesday evening, week number whatever of this pandemic. Good evening, 12-ounce Sports Radio. The Burn with Mitch show, 6 o'clock p.m. Eastern Time. Welcome to the show. Glad to have you with us. We have another exceptional show for you tonight. We've only got 2 guests because I think our first guests, that's plural guests, will have enough to talk about that will last us for a long time. And we will then have enough time to talk with our second guests. But before we get to the guests, I want to shout out again, as I do every week, to our healthcare workers, frontline workers, essential workers for the work that you do. And if you are listening and you know somebody who is in that situation, hopefully you're thanking them for doing what they're doing. We wouldn't be where we were without you. And though things are getting better and things are opening up slightly, it's best to take precautions, and those folks are still doing what they need to do to keep us, the customers, in a situation that's safe. So thank you to those folks. Other shout outs to my Westtown school community, students who are hanging in there and doing a heck of a job. We only got a couple of more weeks of school to go. And faculty and staff who are doing an amazing job keeping school running distance-wise. All the faculty who have had to adjust, my utmost respect to you. Deans and administrators, the same thing. Utmost respect to you for doing what you have never done, never thought you had to do. So keep it up. Parents appreciate it, and everybody's proud of what you're doing. A couple of shout outs, special ones, very special, to my daughters who turned the ripe old age of 28. Yes, I have twin daughters. One who came out from California, and she had only 18 folks on her flight, which was good. Had to wear masks, strict protocols, etc. She came out, celebrated Mother's Day here with us, with her mom, my wife, and it was great to see her. She's back now in California. Airport, she said, was a little more crowded than when she came here, but everything safe and sound. And Kelsey, who does all my social media stuff for me, her 28th and Sarah's 28th was a lot of fun. It was exciting. It was just grand to have everybody there. So a lot of fun this past weekend. So our guests tonight, phenomenal. We've had Ellen Adair on before. Ellen was one of my first guests on beginning, I think it was in October. And Ellen is an actor. She's been in Homeland and The Sinner and Billions, and is a baseball geek. She's proud of that moniker. Eric Gildy, her husband, is also going to be on. They have a new podcast, Take Me Into the Ball Game. Not out to the ball game because we're in. And they are a fun couple to talk with about baseball. And we'll talk to them about their podcast. They are reviewing baseball movies in a very unique way. So we'll talk to them about that. I've listened to their podcasts where they reviewed A League of Their Own, one of my, if not probably my favorite movie. And then most recently, Bingo Long and the Traveling All-Stars and Motor Kings, which is I don't know that many people have seen that movie. It was done in 1977, I believe. And it's a very appropriate, I think, because I have been on as many of you know, a historical kick with baseball. And with women in baseball. And A League of Their Own, obviously, is what that's all about. But had no idea about Bingo Long and its portrayal of, and it's a comedy, labeled a comedy, and there is some drama in there, but overall a comedy about Negro Leagues. And you all know that I have been a huge backer or taken a lot of interest in the Negro Leagues ever since I found out the Centennial is this year. So We're going to talk about those movies. They've reviewed them in their own, like I said, unique way, and we'll talk to them about that. After Ellen and Eric, we have Ethan. I guess it's a triple E. A triple E night here at the Burn with Mitch. Ethan Bryant is an author. He's written a few baseball books, and he's got one coming out in September. Unfortunately, we have to wait till September. And it's a very unique premise. And the name of the book is A Year of Playing Catch. What a simple daily experiment taught me about life. So Ethan went on an adventure that he'll talk about where he had a baseball catch with someone every day of the year. And we're going to talk about that. Very intrigued by this as I am a baseball player and love to have a catch. And he had a catch with some very fun and some very unique and some very interesting folks. So we're going to talk to him a little bit about that. If you have any questions for Ethan or when Ellen and Eric come on about the movie A League of Their Own or the Big O Long movie or about what Ethan did, feel free to tweet them out to me at the Burn Mitch on Twitter. So that's our show. It's going to be fun. Starting at about 6:20, Ellen and Eric will be on with me to talk about baseball movies. I'm also going to talk to them about acting, what they've been watching. You know, how Ellen's been in Homeland. Homeland ended their I guess it was 8 or 9 season run. We were, my wife and I, both very intrigued with Mandy Patinkin, and this year especially, and Claire Danes' performance. As always, she's amazing. So we're going to talk. I want to talk to her a little bit about that, and what else they've been watching. I'm going to tell her what I've been watching, and see what she thinks. And then the next week they're actually reviewing Field of Dreams, and I want to know if they've been there, and if they haven't, I have. I want to talk to them a little bit about that. So a lot of fun coming up. So before we get to them, we do have sponsors we want to acknowledge, and the first one tonight is Jazz Sports. Jazz Sports may be doing some more business as we go into the future here, a few more weeks maybe. It's an online gaming platform that offers betting on sports, casino, and racebook, and they've been in existence since 1994. They're one of the most trustworthy sports books in the industry. Their clients have fun in a secure environment, and their main objective is to ensure that Jazz Sports remains as one of the most respected brands in the gambling industry. They have same-day payouts and can use Bitcoin to deposit and withdraw for security. The sportsbook offers wagering on all United States sports and a great variety of international events with amazing competitive lines. And on top of that, they offer the best cash bonuses for all players, professional or recreational alike. Their casino has more than 400 exciting games to choose from. They take pride in the fact that their slots are set to 97%. 97% payback to give their players the best chance to win. In the racebook, you'll find they have Kentucky Derby, the Preakness, Belmont. Hopefully they'll all end up taking place as we go through the summer. Breeders' Cup, and even the Dubai World Cup, all in one place. And in Jazz, you have access to more than 200 tracks worldwide, 365 days of the year, and they pay full track odds. So join Jazz Sports and be part of the most trusted name in the gaming industry. Use promo code 12OZ Sports. That's 12OZ Sports for a deposit bonus up to 150%. And as I said, coming, who knows what's going to come of games. We'll talk about that in a minute, about baseball's plan to come back. Other sports I've read a little bit about, but if you're looking for tickets, SeatGiant, when everybody does come back, SeatGiant.com is the place to go. It's a marketplace that connects buyers and sellers all around North America. So whether you live in a big city or a small town, SeatGiant has inventory to any big concert, theater show, sporting event, family event, and a whole lot more. Tickets sold on SeatGiant.com marketplace are sold by independent sellers, from fans to professional ticket brokers. And the inventory is huge. They have over 3 million tickets available at all times, giving SeatGiant an advantage in the marketplace. Buy a ticket on SeatGiant, and you always feel safe because they have a great policy that they will stand by you 100%. What does that mean? It means you get a 100% refund for your tickets if your order was accepted but not delivered by the seller, if your order was accepted but not delivered in time for your event, or if your tickets for some reason were not valid for entry. If you see a star symbol next to the ticket listing, that means the seller of those tickets is so confident in the quality of the tickets that they'll offer a 100% money back guarantee on your order. But they don't stop there. Seat Giant does. If your event, you also get a 100% money back guarantee if your event is canceled and not rescheduled. So when you need a ticket to any event in North America, think Seat Giant. Make a purchase on Seat Giant and use promo code 12OZ Sports for discounts on tickets. All right. So, one of the things we're going to talk to my guests about tonight is baseball. Is it going to happen? I don't know, and I don't know if it should. I saw a little bit about some of the guidelines that the ball players are going to have to abide by, and coaches and anybody on the bench. Obviously, they're all going to get tested. There will be no spitting of sunflower seeds. There will be no spitting at all. I believe I read that there were no water bottles on the bench. Showers will not be able to be taken after the game. Just those few tell me that I don't know that this is going to be able to happen. I mean, everybody's a creature of habit, and yes, if you need to not spit, I'm sure you don't spit. If you don't eat sunflower seeds, you can maybe, I don't know, can they chew bubble gum? I don't know. I didn't read it that far into it. The other thing is about this money situation. And the other thing is it really a season if you only play 82 games? The opportunity for the players to play and be safe is key. Again, there will be processes put in place to do that, which is fine. So let's say they do play. So my big question is an 82 game season relevant? I know players just want to play. No fans in the stands. That's okay. I can watch for the fan. That's fine. But as a whole, will the season count? Is it an asterisk? Is there really going to be a World Series with playing in these different divisions that have been proposed? I don't know. I don't see it as that, though I will watch it. And I will watch it, and we will watch it because we're starved for baseball. And maybe it'll be interesting. And maybe an 82-game season, I'll just kind of get over that fact. And just if teams are out there playing and will play the East Coast and the Yankees and the Red Sox and whoever else we're going to play in our division and in the American League East, that could be unique. It will be unique. So I don't know. We'll see. Are they gonna agree to the financials that the owners have proposed to the union? I don't know. I don't know if that's going to happen. I haven't heard anything come up in the last day about it. I know that when it came out, the proposal came out, the guidelines came out. I read that the union's going to review that, so I don't know when that's going to happen. Though we do know that I believe June 2nd was the date for the second spring training to open up. So there's a couple of weeks to go before that'll happen. I don't have time to get into all of what Bryce Harper and his proposal was, but I kind of liked it. A lot of people didn't. 132 games, I believe, is what he said. Playing games through I guess it's November or December, the World Series, and then not starting up again until May. So you get that regular season ends up in October. You have November, December, January, February, March, or February is spring training, so 4 months. So if we end in November, you got December, January, February, March. Maybe you push it back a month. He says start the regular season in May. And start the regular season in May with the games that would take place. You're only missing April for games, so about 25 games. And that way, the following year, 2022, you can start. You go back and start in April. So we'll see. I liked it. Again, I don't have all the details, and it's out there, I'm sure. But it was something that I think can be done. Again, as long as if this virus hopefully is contained and there's a vaccine in January, and the vaccine obviously works, it's out there, the world as a whole, baseball, basketball, all sports, life as we know it, can get back to being a regular day of life that we were used to before this all started. So, hopefully that vaccine will come in soon. They're working on it. I know that I read somewhere that they tested 8 people the other day, and the results were good. Obviously, don't know about all that stuff, but that's what I've read, and trusting the science and the smart doctors and all those folks involved with developing that vaccine to make it so that we are all safe from this. Hopefully, beginning in January of 2021. So we'll see what happens. Looking forward to that vaccine. Looking forward to seeing baseball, any sport. I also read about hockey today. How can you play hockey with this pandemic, with guys constantly touching on a hockey game? No fights, scrums kept, no scrums. I mean, again, the game will change. Hockey was almost ending its season, so it could be interesting to watch. And the same thing with basketball. I mean, just guys are all over each other every second of every game. How can that be enforced? How can that be safe without a vaccine? I just don't know. Don't know how that's going to work. But I think baseball is first on the calendar to come back, and let's see what happens. We'll talk to Ellen and Eric about that in just a few minutes to see what their thoughts are. I'm sure they'll watch. I just want to get their thoughts on what they think will happen, and if that shortened season will be something that they want to figure as a definitive, legitimate season, or if it's obviously it'll be asterisked to a degree, but want to get their thoughts on that. So looking for a good show. Looking for Ellen and Eric to give us a call in just a few minutes. Again, if you have any questions for them about acting, the movies, TV, feel free to tweet them out to me at the Burn Mitch on Twitter, and my social media manager will be on that, and she will get those questions to me, and we will see if we can get them to Ellen and Eric. Okay. Hope your day's been good so far. It's been nice here in the East Coast, and specifically in the Philadelphia area, except for another windy day, which was not something that was enjoyable. Good evening, my friend. How are you?
I'm well. How are you?
I'm doing good. I'm doing good. How's you surviving in New York City, which is great.
We are. Yeah, I mean, the only thing I feel like anybody can say right now is just that they can't complain. So we are doing okay. There's nothing that we can complain about.
Eric, how are you, sir?
I'm fine, thanks. How are you?
I'm doing good. I'm glad to have you with me tonight. It's great. I'm so looking forward to this
Oh yeah, I
conversation.
appreciate it.
Um, it's been fun, following Ellen and yourself, and as much as you are baseball fans as I am, and Ellen knows this, and I'm sure you do too. Um, and where we are right now is just so crazy, and I wanted to get into a little bit of that. And
Yeah.
so I really, I'm going to start with this. I've listened to the two podcasts in total, with League of Their Own and Bingo Long, and
Okay.
and I know I should say the whole title, but I can't. Um, but I want to first. I know that. Listen, I know Ellen, and you are watching TV. Ellen has been in some really good shows, and I want to talk about that too, and acting, and then we'll get into the podcast and the baseball stuff, if that's okay with you guys.
Yeah, well, I mean,
Yeah,
whatever works best for you. I think we're up for
Yeah.
talking about whatever you want to talk
All
about.
right,
Is
terrific.
this like are we on the air already or no?
You are Ellen.
Okay, that's what I thought.
Okay.
Is that
I was
okay?
like, is this a pre-meeting before we actually do the thing?
Yeah, I guess
just
I
wanted
didn't know
to
that either.
what's going on.
You're going on. Oh, Ellen, one thing I forgot to ask: both of you guys, how are your families? There, everybody's good.
Yeah, everybody's okay.
Yeah, everybody's pretty good. My dad still enjoys strolling around grocery stores more than I would like him to.
Yeah.
But aside from that, yeah, no, everybody seems pretty healthy and happy considering the circumstances.
Yeah. Good.
My brother has two little girls, and so he's definitely, had his hands full, he and
Yeah.
his wife, just in the, raising a family in the pandemic stuff that we have not had to deal with.
And how old are they? Eric?
They are 6 and 8.
So they're doing the distance learning with school.
They are, yeah. And it seems like it's going okay,
Uh-huh.
as far as I can tell, as far as has been conveyed to me.
Wait till this is all over. You'll hear all the good stuff.
Right, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, my wife and I said, and our girls just turned 28 last week, and we looked at each other and said, I don't know if we could have done this. I just don't know. With our kids, oh my gosh, it would have been nuts. And, because they're the same age, and, the different personalities. But I absolutely admire the parents out there who are doing it. They have to.
They are
They have no
fucking
choice.
busy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
heroes.
It's absolutely. And I have a next door neighbor, and I said that to her. I said, you guys, and unfortunately they've lost they're not working. And and when you think about the problems, you guys, we have to all put it in perspective. My wife and I are still working. Both of my girls are working. We're lucky. So
Yeah.
I can't complain. I cannot complain about a thing. If I start thinking that way, I kind of smack myself in the head and say, "Stop! You have nothing. You have nothing to complain about."
Yeah.
And your mom's good, Ellen, here in Philly.
Yes. Yeah, she's fine.
Good to hear. All right, that's awesome. Very good. All right, so, Ellen, Eric, my wife and I just finished watching Homeland.
Ooh.
I have to say, Mandy Patinkin this season was the best he's been. I have.
He's spectacular.
He's always terrific to watch. But the amount of emotion that he showed, it's almost every episode, like Claire Danes. Every episode, he was just crazed. Did you have any scenes with him at all?
I did not,
Yeah.
unfortunately. No, I haven't even met him.
Okay.
Yeah, but he does such an exceptional job on the show and like is really put through the ringer.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
So here's my question to you about acting. And every week, and there, you know, and you were on stage. You've been on stage, right? And so there's a difference between being on stage with an audience there in front of you, and doing these takes on these series, these television shows with no audience. So how the heck does somebody get that emotional week after week, scene after scene? How does that happen? I mean, to me, I can say yes. It's simply you just have to get in the mode, but that takes a lot out of somebody individually, emotionally, doesn't it?
Oh yeah, it absolutely does. And Eric can speak to this as well, since he's done both theater and on-camera acting also.
Mm-hmm.
This is true.
But I feel like there are challenges with both of those media. And the challenge with theater is that you do need to be able to replicate the same thing for as many times, or like not exactly the same thing, but you need to make sure that it's like the same enough that you're telling the same story every single night.
Right.
And so that might mean that one night you cry and one night you don't, but as long as you're like being truthful and conveying the same story to the audience, like you've done your job. And the difficult thing with on-camera acting is because the camera is so close to you, it needs to be so real.
Mm-hmm.
Like things are deeply felt and true in theater, but it's possible to have a kind of a level of artifice, which one could also say is like a level of craft, of like being able to get more or less into the same emotional space night after night. But it's not quite as raw and as real as the camera demands.
Mm-hmm.
So something that when you're seeing it on stage would read as a truthful performance, if you're seeing it on camera, it wouldn't necessarily read as a totally truthful performance. You would say, oh, that's really good, but like it doesn't feel completely real to me and I can't figure out why. And it would just because like there's a little bit of craft in the actor like trying to get themselves into the place rather than just experiencing the thing as it happens.
Okay.
Yeah, so much of it is a question of scale, right? If you're in a theater performing and there's a moment that's happening in the show, it needs to happen in such a way that it can be communicated and seem truthful to the people that are 10 feet away, but also the people that are 200 feet away.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's a certain kind of the movement of it, for example, needs to tell the story in a way as clear as possible that even the people in the very back will be able to tell. On the flip side of that, if you're in an emotional moment or a storytelling moment and maybe the camera is super close up on you, you almost have a different kind of restriction where it needs to be really, really truthful and real, especially because the sort of audience of the camera is so close on you. But maybe despite what feels real, maybe it's so tight on you that you actually can't really shift more than an inch or so in one direction, because otherwise it's going to be huge and not seem realistic to that really, really close camera.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, like, and you're telling me, and I'm feeling again. Acting is human artistry. You have to know your spatial. You know, again, you're saying with the camera, and you know, obviously with the way the dialogue comes out, and just getting into your character is all about that too. So.
Yeah.
True. I so much respect for. I mean, Ellen, even in your, you know, in that first scene in The Sinner, where you know, where you die, and I read about, you know, the puking scene, so lovely. But even there, and then you know, going back and seeing you play that, you know, it's just to me good acting. You know, as a fan, as a spectator, is just. I appreciate what you all do, and it's you and authors and artists all, and I don't do any of that, and I have an amazing respect for all of you who do it so well. So kudos to all of you who do that so well, who I enjoy.
That's really kind of you to say. Thanks.
You're welcome. So I wanted to, and before we get into the podcast, so what are you guys watching? What have you liked at this stage of the game? I have a list that I have. I've watched Little Fires Everywhere, The Sinner again, Killing Eve.
Mm-hmm.
Those are the top three that my wife and I are watching. What have you guys? Have you guys watched those, and what else have you been watching?
We're always behind on things.
So behind.
Always behind. And I think it's because, so I grew up without a television, and I can't really figure out how to watch like more than an hour of television per day. And there's so much TV now that like we'll sort of get around to things, but like often it will be much after the fact. So we actually recently, I think it was during this quarantine period.
Yeah, I think it's towards the beginning.
We finally watched Killing Eve, which we had never seen.
Okay.
And by that, she means the first season of Killing
Eve. We just watched the first season.
Okay.
And this is another thing, because we're always behind, is that we tend not to watch seasons of something back to back.
Okay.
Eric will also independently watch things on his own, and he'll just like move through an entire series that would probably take me like 6 years to watch, because he just like is capable of synthesizing more television into his life than I am.
Yeah, no. Okay. My hunger cannot be sated.
Yes.
So I just plow through shows independently. It's true.
And then we watched the third season of The Sinner.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Did you watch Killing Eve in that?
We watched a season of Silicon Valley.
Yes, we watched one of my favorite shows.
Okay.
Which, one of the things that's great about spacing them out, I mean, I will binge watch a series with the best of them. But one thing that's great in terms of watching a show with Ellen and her watching habits is the pacing of it does really draw out the experience. So Silicon Valley is one of our favorite shows, and we got to it kind of late, but we still haven't watched the last season. So it's kind of nice to sort of know
Like
that there's more out there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Or, like we're watching season 2 of Ozark right now.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I was going to ask you about Ozark. Oh, man.
It's so good. And we had seen the first season. We just hadn't seen the second season. We've been watching The Last Dance with the rest of humanity.
Yeah.
We have been watching it.
Okay.
Although not generally 2 hours. We just watched 1 hour on Sunday and 1 hour on Monday. So we finally finished it yesterday.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's really fun.
Yeah, and I get what you're saying. Listen, the best thing about the TV now is the two simple words: on demand.
Yeah.
Right? I mean,
Well, and I never had a television until 2010, and so I actually don't know what it's like to not have television on demand.
Yeah. Well, we had like cable packages of various kinds, and I think for a lot of them we had DVR as well.
Okay,
Yeah.
yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, DVR on demand, whatever. The thing is, you don't have to watch it when it's on. You just
Right.
go to it when you want at your leisure, which is great.
I can't imagine the brutality of that existence, having to watch the thing at a particular time.
It's amazing to think about like times of like people really kind of structuring their lives to some extent on when Seinfeld was going to be on, or like, oh, I can't do this because, it falls within this window of time that I'm watching the show with other people. Like it really was a big thing in terms of people's scheduling.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I would do that with baseball a little bit, although plenty of times, because I often like work in the evenings, I would just studiously avoid whatever had happened, even in the like whatever nondescript like June Thursday, well, probably not Thursday, like June Friday Phillies game. I would be like, I'm not gonna look at the score. I'm just gonna go home and watch it on delay.
Right.
So,
Yeah, I mean,
So used to that.
it helps you with your schedule, but then there are others who Wednesday nights, my wife and I, I have at school, all of us have a duty night. So my duty night is on Thursdays and happened to be on Thursdays, and Survivor was on Thursdays a couple of years ago. So she would DVR it and it'd be fine, but now it's moved to Wednesdays, and I'm coming home and we look forward to Survivor 8 o'clock on a Wednesday night. It was great. It's great. That's just us. All right, let's go on to this. So for both of you, here's my question. Do you think baseball will happen this year?
Oh,
I am less optimistic than I was before the owners tried their revenue sharing
Yep.
shenanigans.
Okay, good. I was going to ask you why, and you answered it. Okay.
But I still feel like there's so much money on the line for everybody that I still feel like it's likely that we will see some kind of baseball this year. I think there's a better chance that we will than that we won't.
Okay. Do you think so? You're thinking, in essence, you're saying that this scrum between the owners and players will get worked out.
I think so.
Okay.
I mean, I could see a reality in which it didn't, is my completely waffling about it answer. But I think that the owners are, I hope, going to be motivated enough to recoup any of their money that they're going to want to make sure that some of the season happens.
Eric, what are your thoughts?
yeah, I feel the same way. I don't know. It's something that I don't know as much about as I would like. And I think that's true of everybody because the books of all of these teams are sort of kept under lock and key. And there's so much creative math going on.
Yes.
I was just thinking about, what was it? The Royals who said if this new plan that we're offering up doesn't get accepted, we stand to lose. And it was the amount of money that they said was more than the entire Royals payroll to begin with.
Yes.
So it was how do you get that number? And I feel like there's a lot of creative math going around, or I get the sense that there is, and it just makes me feel distrustful of the ownership position and feel like there's a lot of bad faith creative math on the table right now. And I just hope that I hope that it works itself out in a way where there is baseball, but also the players are getting fair compensation for playing to begin with, but also for putting themselves at risk to do so.
Yeah,
and I
it's
think
not the owners who have to, go out and be in contact with other people.
Right.
It's the players.
So, and I haven't lost hope that will happen. I just feel like there are probably some things that need to bounce back and forth between the parties before it does happen.
Yeah, and
maybe some staring.
It's so funny because the guidelines I didn't read all of them, but the headlines were no spitting, right? No spitting, which means what baseball player doesn't spit? Sunflower seeds. They can't shower after the games. As a group, I don't know. I just don't know. I mean, they're all going to get tested. I just don't know in reality how it can happen. But let's switch to if it does happen. Last discussion before we get to the podcast. If it does happen, obviously an 82 game season is an asterisk season. Does it really count?
Well,
I love this. I love the silence. I'm glad you're thinking.
Yeah, I guess it counts as something, but I think it's always going to have an asterisk.
Yeah.
This season is always going to be different as long as whatever happened in 2020 is remembered in human history. So I think that, I mean, my sort of joke answer wants to be like, if it's the Phillies, it's completely legitimate. I mean, if it's the Yankees,
Yeah.
I'm with you on
no
that one.
way. But I mean, I think that the most important thing that it is providing humanity would be like the enjoyment of getting to see baseball again, which I don't think is the most important thing in the world. And I don't want people to be at risk, just like purely for our enjoyment.
Right.
But that's what it's about. It's about having something that people can be happy about right now. Like, it's about having something that people can join around in discussion, that, you know, we can, in the ways that we are fighting with each other, can be like jokingly fighting about each other because we're rooting for rival teams, instead of, you know, people really being at odds with each other about the facts of what is a healthy way to live your life under a pandemic. And so, like, I think that that's an important service. And frankly, if it's like a 40-game tournament, I'm for it. I'm for any amount of baseball as long as it can be done safely.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think, you know, there will be an asterisk behind the season. I think most people probably wouldn't argue with that, but I honestly don't see that as a huge problem. I mean, I think people do that with various seasons and records and runs for any number of reasons, whether that's because the ball is juiced or the players are juiced or what have you. And I think it adds a lot of fuel to the fire of rivalries and heated animated discussions. And ultimately, I don't mind either of those things. I think that I'd rather there be heated discussion about the validity of something rather than no talk because the thing didn't happen at all.
Right.
Yeah. And I'm also, just one last thing, like, I'm here for any sort of weird stats that would come out of a shortened season. You know what I mean? Like, if we were to think about last year being clipped after half of the season, you know, you'd have Cody Bellinger hitting like 353, and you'd have Hyun-Jin Ryu with like a 150 ERA or something. I'm completely looking up those numbers. And like, I feel like in this environment that we're all living in, I could take that kind of almost wackiness out of the baseball season. Like, that would increase its enjoyment for me rather than decrease it.
Yeah, it's funny. As you said, you were waffling. I have too, because I said to somebody just yesterday, I said, I don't know that I would enjoy it. But as I'm thinking today, coming on the show, I'm thinking, you know, and before you came on, I was talking about, you know, maybe if baseball comes on and I have to I can't go, and I'm watching, oh, heck yes, I'm going to watch. It will be different. Yankees and the Phillies playing with the Red Sox and the different division. And it's like, you know what? It's okay to be different. It's okay. We will have baseball if that happens.
Yeah.
And we'll run it and we'll watch it because we're so starved and we love it. And it's going to be different, but that's okay. And like you said, we know already it's an asterisk. So it's okay. We've accepted that already, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, 100%.
Good. All right. All right. Time for your podcast. All right. This is going to be fun. So before I start this, I have to preface all this by saying, interesting how you picked these, that I picked to start with League of Their Own and then obviously Bingo Long, because I saw that you guys did it and I wanted to talk to you about it. And saw it and I never watched it. So, and Ellen, you know that I'm a big baseball fan, but I know that, so at the beginning of the year, and I found out that the Negro Leagues were celebrating its centennial anniversary. Okay? I never really knew much about the Negro Leagues. And I'm looking at the players, and I'm reading about the players, and I'm in Facebook groups about the Negro Leagues. And I'm like,
very cool.
Holy crap. Why didn't I know about this growing up? And the same thing, though we have the movie And I didn't, again, League of Their Own came out later than Bingo Long, but I didn't know much about the women playing baseball. Okay, so I had Bob Kendrick on the show in January to talk about the centennial celebration, and the president of the Negro League Museum, and I said, why isn't this more out there, if you will, to us? And here's what my premise was. I was not a good student in high school. I hated
Mm-hmm.
I hated history. But if somebody had given me some information about and a project to do on segregation, and I could talk about baseball and the Negro Leagues, I would have loved history. The same thing about the All-American Girls Professional Baseball League. I would have learned more about history than I ever learned. So I'm so appreciative, even at my age right now, learning about the history of, and it's not just baseball. And Bob Kendrick said this to me a lot. It's American history, and why don't we
It really
know,
is.
right? And I don't know why we don't know more about it. But thank goodness for A League of Their Own, and the movie I had never seen until I heard you guys talk about it, and I watched it yesterday and today. Bingo Long and the Traveling All Stars and Motor Kings. So thank you for doing that for me. I appreciate that.
Well, Bingo Long was a movie that was pretty much off our radar entirely up until fairly recently, right?
Yeah, we had never seen the movie either. So yeah, it's such a delightful movie that I just really felt like we're giving people a gift if they hadn't seen this movie before
Yeah.
and they decide to see it now.
It instantly became one of our favorite baseball movies.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's go hit A League of Their Own first, because I have a bone to pick with you guys on one particular topic that you covered, and I actually watched it today, and you guys are wrong. Okay, I'll start with that.
All right.
First of all, it is my favorite baseball movie. Tom Hanks's performance, to me, is his best because of lots of things. The
We're in agreement so far.
the no, I mean, obviously the no crying in baseball, and I think you guys did talk about this, and I used this particular scene when I was training summer camp staff about working with kids. So he gets mad.
Okay.
He calls Evelyn over, and we do the no crying in baseball, and she's crying, and he gives all that stuff. What's the matter, Jimmy? Well, blah blah blah, and he goes over all that stuff that his coach told him, manager told him when he was playing in the big leagues. So she's crying, right? And then in the playoffs, she misses it again, and instead of getting mad, he, with that bent finger and his little curled mouth and the spittle coming out of his mouth, and he's quiet. Evelyn,
His whole face is
next
just
year,
trembling.
oh my gosh, next year, and
Yeah.
he's, we know we have to work on hitting the cutoff man, and he starts to shake, and he's shaking, and I'm dying, and every time I watch it, I laugh out loud because it's such a great way. He learned, he got better because he realized yelling at her wasn't going to get anywhere. And it shows because at the end of the last scene, she throws a frozen rope to the cutoff man, right? And her reaction to that was kind of a pump fist, and she was excited. And so I said to my camp kids, my counselors, I said, see, when a camper you have the previous year comes back and he was a pain in the ass, give him a second chance. Okay? Maybe he's learned a little bit. And that's what he did. And I love that for that reason, because he was able to learn. Now, he was such a drunk, and, we all know the story, but everything that he went through, and I'm going to go finish the whole movie, and then we'll talk more about it. And I'm an emotional guy, and I just loved the end of that movie going into the Hall of Fame. I mean, to me, and then
It's really great.
oh, I mean, I cry every time I watch it because it's just so poignant. Knowing what baseball means in the Hall of Fame and seeing Jimmy Dugan's poster up there, and
Yeah.
what's his name? The son, the kid. You're gonna lose.
Oh, right.
And they see his, and they go up to him. How's your mom? Oh, she passed. It's heart wrenching. It's just, to me, it was heart wrenching. And then you guys at the end of the movie with the credits to see the actual women playing the freaking game and how good they are. Oh, talk about coming full circle. It
Yeah.
just absolutely. I get the chills talking about it.
And I love that moment in the Hall of Fame where you see the Jimmy Dugan like little display with the stat line, because you really,
Yes.
it's the only time in the movie where you get a glimpse of the player that he was.
Yeah.
Because in the, as we see him in the movie, he's a washed up alcoholic kind of clown who has just lots of bad decisions piling up on his shoulder, and then he's kind of given this second chance with this kind of publicity coaching gig, and you get a little bit of redemption there. But I love that there is that little moment of seeing the kind of heroic character that he was in his prime.
Mm-hmm. And the name was Stillwell.
Stillwell, yes.
Well, yeah.
You're gonna lose. And then he throws the mid Adam, was it? God got him. It's just some of these classic little lines, and you're like, yes, you got him because he was such a little pain in the ass.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
What was the oh god, the name of the guardian? Guardian's not the word that I want.
Oh, I know who you're talking about. Yes. Like the,
Oh.
the nanny?
In our podcast, we talked about how it was her worst day. It was the worst.
Oh
day
yeah,
for her.
the chaperone.
Chaperone,
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my God,
Yeah.
so funny. Okay, so before I forget, the
Yeah.
final scene, and I'm going to talk to you about the kid character, because and you in your podcast you review on a scouting scale, which Eric, I got to thank Ellen for. I mean, the woman's amazing with these stats. I had no idea what the scouting scale was, so thank you both for 20 to 80. 20 to 80.
Oh, that's
Had no idea.
so fun for me to believe.
Well, and that was definitely Ellen's idea to structure the podcast
Okay.
that way. And I think that if the podcast shows anything, it shows that she is a much better scout than I am, because I just throw scores out there and then I'm like, oh yeah, I don't know, maybe my score was too low or too high.
Right.
Oh no,
right.
there's an episode that hasn't come out yet.
Okay.
It's not going to be this week's episode, which is coming out tomorrow. It's going to be the next one.
Yes. Okay.
And when I was listening back to it, I was like, I should have dropped these scores by like 5 or 10 points.
Oh really? Oops.
That score is way too high. Yeah.
Anyway,
So
so I know you. Two things. Before I forget, I'm a lot older than you guys, so I kind of forget these things. But
I forget everything.
so I think she
I couldn't think of the
overacts.
word for something.
I know that you talked about the acting, and I think the girl's name who plays Kit overacts the whole movie. Anyway, she's coming around third.
Oh, it's good.
Ellen,
Yeah.
she's coming around third. She's not stopping. You claim in the podcast that she should have been tagged out at third, or could have been tagged out. From what I remember you saying this. So I watched it today. There is no way she could be tagged out at third, because
I was saying she should be tagged out at third. And granted, we haven't watched this movie for probably like a month or like 6
Yeah,
weeks.
a month. Yeah.
We're way ahead in terms of when we're releasing them. But she's basically going right by Doris. So I was thinking that Doris could have potentially tried to tag her out on the base path.
And I don't think so, because as I watched the clip today, Rosie gets the ball. Boy, and I had no idea Rosie O'Donnell was a good player. So she catches the ball. So the ball gets in her mitt, and Kit is running full speed. As Rosie gets the ball in her glove, she's basically behind her, Rosie was turning towards the shortstop. She would have had to turn a 180 to tag her, but she couldn't have because she was running full speed. Now I think Doris held the ball because she was so shocked she was running, and then Tom Hanks throw it in. So I was disputing you guys on that because I was like, wait a minute, there's no way. So you got
I totally understand that Doris didn't make that play. I was merely pointing out that like there is a world in which she could have tagged her out on the base paths, and nobody ever seems to notice that.
Okay, I want you to watch that. Watch it again.
We'll review the tape.
Please review the tape and get back to me on that.
You're probably right. You just watched it, so.
So another question, and I think you guys did talk about this. Did Dottie drop the ball on purpose, or did Kit really want it more, and that's just the way it happened?
Yeah, no, we do talk about it,
Yeah.
and I think we acknowledge that, in our opinion, it's an ambiguous thing. Although I do tend to, at least with the most recent viewing, I kind of go back and forth on it. That I think that when they meet after the game, and Dottie has the line to Kit, which I think is just as simple as it's something like, "You wanted it more than me." I think that she's telling the truth.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what that means in terms of how that play happened at home, I don't know exactly, but I think I feel like that's the story that I'm getting from it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think most of what we discussed on the podcast was that the film really sets up justification for either point of view.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you want to argue that she, and I don't mean like threw the ball away,
Right.
but just sort of like allowed the thing to happen. What you could go to is that early scene when we see older Dottie tell her younger grandson that he should, let the younger one win a little bit. And then she tells the younger one, like, kill him or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what I do think is that Dottie did not, in the world in which Dottie is a real person, with motivations that are separate from those of her creators, because of course, like, the movie has her drop the ball. That is part of its like important narrative structure, that she does drop the ball. So in that sense, she is supposed to drop the ball. But I don't think that Dottie meant to, but I think that she learned something in that moment about letting her younger sister win that ends up being a life lesson for her that she is passing along to her grandchildren.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Good. That's interesting. That's good. I like that. I like the way you explain that. But yeah, and it's ambiguous, Eric. It can be ambiguous, and leave it up to the viewer of the movie to decide. And it's again a point of conversation. So I'm gonna move to. So thank you for doing that movie. It's again my favorite movie. Just
so
absolutely
good.
love it.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite baseball movies too.
And then again, thank you for bringing up Bingo Long and the Traveling All Stars and Motor Kings. Again, historical, and all the stuff that you bring out. And folks, if you're listening, please, Ellen and Eric do an amazing job of not necessarily, and you don't have to listen to their podcast for the grades, okay? But because they bring out so much detail on specific areas of the movie that you may not normally have noticed. And that's what I really appreciate, especially if it's a movie that you haven't seen a lot, like I've watched League of Their Own 400 times. But this one was great, again, because of the history, because of what you bring out in the history. And I read a little bit about it. Glenn Macnow, I don't know if you know Glenn Macnow, he's a local sports talk host here at WIP, 94 WIP. He and Ray Didinger wrote a book, the Ultimate Book of Sports Movies, the top 100. He's got League of Their Own at 22, and he's got, and when you guys came out with this, I said, okay, well, I know he has it here somewhere. Where is Bingo? And I think Bingo is, let me get to it real quick. It is number 39 out of 100. So I said, okay, if Glenn rated it that high, I've got to watch this thing. And then I listened to you, and it was awesome because there's so much stuff. For instance, I'm going to go through this real quick. My notes I took that you wrote. Who knew of the House of David team? So I'm looking at this uniform. I'm going, and I'm Jewish. I'm going, it's a Jewish team? No, it's not, because thanks to you, I heard about it, and I read about it this afternoon. Ellen, about the grip that they showed he was going to throw his fastball with. Yes or no?
Definitely not a fastball.
Yeah. I can't remember what's his. The last at bat where he crosses home plate and hits the home run. Right, he steps out of the box. And Glenn makes a comment in the book that Emmett Ashford, as the umpire, a professional umpire, should have known that rule. But for me, for all of this, and I loved the Esquire Joe running forever, and I love that scene because I'm watching, and you said, Ellen, oh my gosh, is he ever going to stop running? You knew he was going to catch it, but it was about getting there. And he caught it, and it was like, okay, yes, he did it. And yes, they had to go back and retouch the bases. I mean, it was so much fun, so many different things, so much different stuff in that movie. It was so fun to watch. I really appreciated all of what that movie brought. So thank you for all of that.
Oh, thank you. Well, and we're trying, with doing the podcast, we're kind of exploring a lot of different movies and really trying to mix it up. And a number of them are real classics, and we're also kind of dipping our toes in movies that are not classics or even kind of lauded or not lauded, but had known for being
famous for being bad,
particularly bad.
Okay.
And I think the goal would eventually be to sort of feel that people could listen to the podcast, maybe even say don't have familiarity with the movie. But I do think that Bingo Long is one that we both were kind of adamantly like, don't listen to this podcast unless you've seen this movie because it is so that good.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was. So I just, again, the opportunity to, again, for me, personally, learning about the Negro Leagues, and and Ellen, it was so great when you said at the beginning, I'm watching a movie, but I don't know if it was the right movie, and I had the same thing. I thought the same thing. I'm watching the newsreel. I'm like, wait a minute, what is this? A commercial? What are they doing? Is this an ad? And then
right.
then it goes to the right after that goes right to the field. All the terms that you hear about barnstorming and what does that mean? What did that mean when I started learning about all this? What does that mean? Okay, they're just traveling. So, and like you said, the cast. I mean, who doesn't love a movie with James Earl Jones? Oh my gosh, right?
I mean, he's the dreamiest baseball catcher of all time.
I know, I did hear that. And of course, and Eric, we went into the Billy D. Williams history of movies with Brian's song, and if you didn't cry at that song, you have that movie. You have no heart.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh! And then Richard Pryor,
Richard Pryor, yeah. And man, he was on top of the world that year.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, and you're right, Ellen. You mentioned on the podcast, and as you're watching it as a baseball fan, and he's talking to, who was he talking to? Was it
You're talking to Rainbow,
right?
Yeah.
And a batting average, and he's like struggling with it, and you're like, it wasn't overt. It was kind of subtle humor, and you had to just love what he said, the way he was thinking. Oh, okay, well, we'll get to that. It was great.
Yeah, I love how he kind of like doesn't get super upset. He's like, no. You do this and you do this. And, no, that's not right. Okay, let me start again. And like, I love how he just is like continually tackling this puzzle of how to get the correct stat.
Yeah.
Well, I loved it, and I say this in the podcast, but like I love it so much as a really good joke made out of the sad fact that we don't have a lot of stats for a lot of Negro League play, you know? So like we don't really know exactly how many home runs Josh Gibson hit. You know, his Hall of Fame plaque credits him with like almost 800, but
Right.
there's a publication of like the history of the Negro Leagues that credits him with like 962. So it's just like we don't know.
Yeah.
There's a lot.
The movie does a really good job of that in general, of kind of taking something and then making kind of an entertaining scene or scenes about it. The stats, calculation scenes, and how that actually is related to the real issue of kind of not having reliable stats for the Negro League. Similarly, with that character, just the whole fact of his trying to pass himself off as a dark-skinned Cuban player, and then later in the game trying to pass himself off as Native American, are, for people who are not necessarily familiar with baseball history, I'm sure that like if my mom saw the movie, these would read as pretty broadly comic beats to her.
Right.
But the fact that they're based in real things that happened within early 20th century baseball, of these managers trying to get these players onto teams one way or another, I think is really cool from like a storytelling standpoint to find this entertainment value in a real thing that happened, and you're still kind of like it allows the story to be told in the way they want to tell it while still having the real issues that were going on in the conversation.
Exactly. And that's, again, yes, Alan, what you said, it's a sad state of affairs, but the way it's presented is, and I didn't know when I started watching it that it was basically classified as a comedy. So I'm looking at more drama in terms of the Negro Leagues, and it goes into some of the the Sally character, the head of the owners, but then there's that comic relief that's in there with, is it Bertha, her name, the owner?
Bertha, yeah.
Strong owner. I mean, so there's a good mix, and they allowed you, and they obviously did it to say, okay, and again, going back to understanding the players when he slides into second and there's polka dot underwear showing, that they knew they had to engage the audience somehow, and it was okay to do that,
Yeah.
And
and that not only was it okay, it was like what they had to do
right
in order to, make it out of there.
Yeah.
I don't want to say alive.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah.
Not just to do the work of playing the game, but doing the work of entertaining, to put at ease the white people around you and like be safe and all of that. Like the double or triple duty of that job is crazy.
Yeah. And you know what else I liked? I loved the dancing through the town. I love that.
That song is so good. I'm physically incapable of like staying still when that song comes on.
It's probably the best baseball song we've heard of the movies that we've done so far.
Yeah, it's just so uplifting. These guys really just wanted to play, right? And that's what Bob Kendrick would say. The Negro Leagues, all these guys wanted to do was play baseball. It was in their system. It's like we all love it. And these guys they had the ability, and they made the best of what they could, and they were happy in essence when they were on that field. They were playing baseball, and again, I'm not talking this just in the movie, but Negro Leagues themselves. They just wanted to play baseball, and they got the chance, and then and then Ellen at the end, again, you mentioned, and Eric, you talked about Jamie, his reaction when he gets called up to the Dodgers. I mean, it's
Yeah.
a proud moment, yet a sad moment because knowing that again he was smart because he knew the end was coming to what they were, what they had. So again, kind of poignant there. But in the end, with them hugging, it was just a neat way to finish that up. So it was fun. So thank you for bringing that to the forefront, and I hope a lot of people can watch this. Again, American History, Negro Leagues is awesome. Is awesome. All right,
Yeah,
I got a couple more minutes. A couple more minutes with you guys. I hear that
All right.
Okay.
you're doing Field of Dreams next.
That's right.
Yeah.
Field of Dreams will be out tomorrow.
Okay.
Yeah.
Again, real quick story. First of all, have you guys been to the Field of Dreams?
No, I haven't, and I'm from Iowa, so I have no excuse.
He has no excuse.
Oh, Eric.
Although I'm from a different part of Iowa,
That's okay.
That's the weak excuse that I have.
Okay, that's okay. You'll get there. It's not going anywhere. When Netflix had its 10-year anniversary, long story short, we ended up going out there. They were showing the film they were going out around the country showing films where they were showing movies where they were filmed. So they did
Oh, that's cool.
Jaws on Long Island, and it happened to be that we were going camping with my mother-in-law and father-in-law and my kids and my wife in northern Illinois. We were going to stop at the Field of Dreams, but we found out that Kevin Costner was going to be there.
Oh.
Yeah, I have this story could take a half an hour if I draw it all out, but I won't to bore you. But just to let you know, I ended up getting his autograph on a baseball.
Very cool.
Oh my God,
That's
Ellen,
amazing.
The best.
Ellen, Eric, it was surreal. So we watched the movie, and we're with a bunch of obviously a lot of Iowans sitting on the field, and the line comes up, "Is this heaven?" And everybody, and then you hear, "No, it's Iowa." And everybody claps, and I get the chills now just saying it. And at the end of the movie, he says it again, and we all clap. Right? The movie ends. You look over the house; it's a full moon. We're waiting for the bus to take us back to the parking lot, half mile up the road. What do you see on the road?
Moonlight Graham.
I wish. I heard a voice. He said, "If you get on the bus, you'll go home." I saw all these taillights, not the headlights, but the taillights going out on the road.
Yeah,
Oh.
it's like the final shot of the movie.
Oh my gosh! So
That's so cool.
I can't wait to hear your podcast tomorrow.
Well,
Go ahead.
Yeah, it'll be. Let us know what you think.
Okay.
We both hadn't seen it in a while, and it was a very interesting conversation that we had about it. I think.
yeah.
Oh, good.
I think
Okay.
so too. I love to hear your Kevin Costner story, and I'm glad that means that you enjoy in our yes or no segment when we ask the question of every movie, would this movie be better with Kevin Costner in it?
Yeah.
Well,
And sometimes it's very straightforward, and sometimes it's not.
Yeah.
Yeah. I didn't have an immediate answer to that as such, except I have to get a thought in my head the way I work. And when you said that particular character, I'm like, yeah, the staid, business guy. I'm thinking, with a white suit. I'm thinking, you know what? Yeah, that could work with darker hair. I'm thinking with darker hair and maybe a mustache.
Yeah. I'm just always trying to get Kevin Costner in those movies. I'm like, where could I fit him in?
Yeah.
That's
yeah.
so funny.
And sometimes I'm like, like with Major League, which was the first one, which was our first podcast.
Uh-huh.
I was sort of like, I don't know that I need Kevin Costner in this movie. It's pretty good the way that it is.
Yeah.
Definitely needed Kevin Costner in The Pride of the Yankees, so.
And I haven't watched that yet, so I have to watch it. And that also is on in the book, Glenn and Ray's book. It's definitely in there as a top 100 of their movies. So, listen, guys, I really appreciate you coming on. It was you're doing fun. This is really fun to listen to. Um,
Oh, thanks so much.
and I really hope that that there are a bunch of folks that will be able to listen to what you're doing, especially now because there's not much to watch. And I know that what you say, because you're both very smart people, you're both analytical, and especially about baseball. I mean, what could be better?
Yeah.
I mean, that's why we named the podcast "Take Me Into the Ball Game," because there's no really other places to take a person to a ball game.
So true. When I saw that, I said, that's a very cute name. I like it. It took me in. So it made sense, a lot of sense. Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Guys,
Well,
I've kept you on a long time.
Oh, it was a total delight.
It's our pleasure.
I
Yeah. Thanks
really
for having us on.
I appreciate it. And I'll listen to the podcast. I'll get it out to you, Ellen, at some point, and Eric, on a Twitter feed or on somehow to get you my thoughts.
Yeah, please do.
And I really
Absolutely.
okay. I
We've
appreciate.
got some fun ones coming up.
All right, good. I really appreciate it, and I'm really looking forward to it.
Yay!
Yay! Thanks so much.
Be safe, both of you. Families, I hope they continue to stay safe, which is great. And we'll continue to be in touch.
Wonderful.
Awesome.
Yeah, same to you and your family.
All right,
Yes.
thanks, Ellen. Eric, thank you very much. Really appreciate it. Have a good night.
Thank
You
you. You
too.
too.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.
Well, that was fun. Like I said, very, very smart, analytical, and if you're into baseball, in terms of a movie, they give a lot. They give a lot in their analysis of what they do, and it's really fun to listen to their podcast. So it's Take Me Into the Ball Game podcast. Ellen Adair at ELLEN_Adair ADAIR, and at Eric ERIC Gildy GILDE. So a lot of fun, and I can't wait to listen to their Field of Dreams podcast. And next up, we will have Ethan Bryan. Ethan, another baseball fan. He will be talking about his trek, adventure, if you will, where he played catch every day of the year. Now, if you're a baseball fan and a baseball player, who wouldn't want to do that? I wish I could come up with an idea like that. That would be very unique and fulfilling with baseball. But he did it, and I believe he was inspired by his daughter. And we look forward to having him on in just a few minutes to talk about how he did this. How did he do it in cold weather? Did he hit cold weather? Is there anybody famous that he had a catch with? Was it just one per day? You know, those kinds of things. So we'll get some details from Ethan in just a few minutes. And I know that he will be able to provide all this information for us. So hang on for just a minute or two, and Ethan will be giving us a call. And as we wait, we will talk. We will. We will talk about what Ellen and Eric said about, baseball. Is yes. Waffling. I guess whatever it is, one will have to accept the fact that it is going to be what it is. So if you like baseball, and it's 82 games, and there will be a World Series, and there will be an MVP and a batting champ and all those stats. We know it'll be an asterisk, and we know this is going to be the reality. So I guess accept it. You can't fight it. So just accept it. So we'll do that. I'm in. I've changed a little bit from my opinion, even from I think just a couple of days ago. And that's fine. I just don't know how basketball and hockey will come back. And I believe we have Ethan on the line. Hello, Ethan.
Hello. How are you?
Oh, Ethan, it's so good to talk to you, my friend. I feel like we're buddies already. How are you?
I'm good.
Good.
A little sad that we're not sharing a cheesesteak, but other than that,
Listen, I had a cheesesteak this past weekend. I'm sorry to tell you.
so where did you get it from?
I don't even know. We had a birthday party for my daughters. I think we got it from I think it was an Italian. I think it was where'd they get it from? Maybe my social media manager Kelsey will text me and tell me because she's listening. We celebrated birthdays of my daughters. They're twins, and we had food come in, and we had 3 cheesesteaks delivered, and they were good. But it wasn't a Tony Luke's or a Jim's steak, from Philly. It was another restaurant that makes them. And listen, the key to that, I think, is the bread, and the bread was very soft, and it was a lovely thing. Sorry, Ethan.
That sounds marvelous.
Are you? I think your mouth is watering. I can tell.
It is.
I'm sorry.
It is.
We better get off the food and talk baseball.
I'm game.
All right, good. So how are you? Where are you calling from?
Springfield, Missouri.
All right. So it would be hard for me to throw a ball or you to throw a ball from Springfield and get it here. So we might have to meet in the middle at some point to have that catch.
Hey, I'm game. Man, Philly's on my bucket list. I'd love to get there one of these days.
All right, listen. Speaking of that, hold on a minute. This may happen. We're going to be coming out there at the end of July. My brother-in-law has a new lake house outside of Peoria. Who's to say we couldn't meet somewhere in the middle? Or maybe we meet in St. Louis where my other brother-in-law lives and we can have a catch. Let's work on that.
Man, right now that sounds fantastic.
I know, doesn't it? Especially with the weather getting better. And I used to play baseball in a men's league. Didn't play last year. Obviously, there's no games this year. I was going to possibly play this year. But, I played left field, and it's just, there's nothing like going out there and just, even during warm-ups, it's just fun. Even during, as you know, it's practice. Just throwing the ball.
I want to hear about that. I played in a men's league last year for.
Oh, did you?
Yes, it was incredible.
What age level?
Well, it is 18 and older.
Okay.
And it's just a 16 team league. You have to try out. There were 137 people that in this league. 137 people tried out for 84 spots, and I was the 4th oldest in the league.
You were the 4th oldest in the league. You're blipping out a little bit here.
Yes, I was 4th oldest. Man, the joys of a flip phone.
Yes. Is that what you have, a flip phone?
Yes, sir.
Oh my goodness.
I didn't reach you.
Oh, we just dropped off. All right, we're having some problems. Let me see if I can give him a call here. Maybe, let's see. Let me see if I can give him a call because we're having a bit of problem with his flip phone. Let's see if I can give him a call. Let me see. Maybe he'll give me a call back. All right. Oh, he's calling back. He's calling back. All right, you there?
How embarrassing! I brag about my flip phone and it cuts out on me.
It did. So you made the teams. Is that right?
I did. Yeah, 4th oldest in the league.
Okay.
I played left field also.
Oh, me too.
I was a pinch runner. Yeah.
You and I, yes. Okay.
And I had a whole page full of stats for the limited action that I saw. But then with 2 games to go, I tore a calf, and that was an experience.
That hurts. That
Oh,
hurts.
man.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
And I can share my torn Achilles story with you at some point. When we meet.
Oh.
Yeah, that was no fun. That was 11 years ago.
Oh, goodness.
Yeah, that was no fun. But
That's a tough surgery to come back from.
yeah, it is. And I don't recommend it to anybody. Believe me, it's not good. But you get over it and you work hard to get back, and I did, and it's fine. I mean, I've played ever since after I healed,
Yeah.
so it was okay. All right, let's talk. Listen, we didn't come on to talk about me and baseball. We talked about you and your book. So intrigued, but I'm so disappointed it doesn't come out until September.
Yeah, no.
So let's start out. I read that this idea came from your daughter. Is that right?
Yeah, there was no planning that went into it.
Okay.
My youngest daughter is an artist. She's an incredible artist, and sometimes I'll post pictures that she's done and stuff. And just for fun, for Christmas 2017, she gave me a baseball and just had a simple little writing on it that said, "Dad, want to play catch?" Well, I thought it was like a gift certificate.
Oh.
Like I could redeem it for a game of catch anytime I wanted. And it was in July that I found out that was wrong. But so on January 1st, 2018, it was 1 degree, and I was kind of having like post-holiday blues. I was just kind of cleaning things up,
Mm-hmm.
and I found her ball. And I just yelled at her. I said, "Hey, Sophie, you want to go play catch?" She got really quiet for a second. Like, "Outside?" I was like, "Well, yeah, outside." She's like, "Well, at a baseball field?" Well, sure, at a baseball field. And she's really, really quiet. "Okay, I'll do it." And so we put on layers and layers of clothes and drove to a baseball field and played catch. 30 throws. And after that time, your fingers are freezing.
Yes.
And you got eyes. Your eyes are crying. You got snot dripping down your nose. And we take a quick selfie on her phone, and just because it was January 1st, I put it on a really old vlog that I used occasionally,
Uh-huh.
and just said something, about Happy New Year, something like that. And so that afternoon, my oldest daughter yelled to me, she said, "Dad, I'll go play catch with you." Well, it had warmed up. It was 5 degrees now.
Nice.
And so we step out in the backyard, and the dog is chasing us every time we throw the ball. And it doesn't take long before our glasses start to fog over while we're playing catch, which is a wonderful experience. So we take another selfie. I put it on the blog. And that night at dinner, we're eating at the table, and they just said, "So, Dad, what's going to happen? Well, what would happen if you played catch every day for a whole year?" And I was just like, "Oh, well, I know what would happen. I'd have to have surgery." And I'm like, "No, Dad, seriously, you should think about it. You should do it." And I was like, "Ugh." And I've had a couple major surgeries, and they've been hard, and recovery's always hard. And I was like, "Man, I don't know that I could do another surgery. That's just so." Also, on day 2, we're getting ready to go to the family movies, and they're like, "Dad, you don't want to give up something on the second day, do you?" So on the way to the movie, we stop at the same baseball field.
Nice.
And Sophie and I play catch.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I just take another selfie, and at this point, I'm just like, I'm not sold into it at all. And that night, a friend reached out to me on Facebook, said, "Hey, I saw you play catch. I'm going to be in town tomorrow. I'll play catch with you." And so it continued like that for a couple days, and then it went crazy.
Wow.
And then I jumped in with both feet, and it was a blast. It was the best year of my life, I promise.
So at what point? So was it at that point, Ethan, that you said, "I'm going to go do this"? What made that decision happen?
It was about 5, 6, 7 days into the event of doing it, of starting to do it, and I was like, the only way I know how to do anything is to put all of me into it, to give all my heart. I was like, to do this project half-heartedly, it would be to do a disservice to the game that I love. And so I was like, all right, I'm in. I'm going to give this everything that I've got. And we went from the coldest game I played catch, negative 15 wind chill, and that was brutal. And I played catch over 100 degrees too many times to count. I played catch on 3 different days, but it was the historic hottest temperature for that day.
Great. It's just additional history you add to the book, I'm sure. Which is great.
Yeah. So, but it
So
was such a fantastic experience of just meeting new people.
So were you working at the time and you were able to take off of work to do this?
I'm a writer,
Okay,
so
right, so you are a writer, so you could now. Did you? Okay, so let me go on another tact. Did you have the idea that you were going to do this and write the book? I know you were blogging about it, but did
yep.
you know?
Well, at the beginning of 2018, I was working on 2 other books, and I don't know why. Really, I started about blogging every day about playing catch. Other than that's what I did on day 1, and so it just kind of made sense. Hey, this is who I played catch with. This is what happened.
Mm-hmm.
And about 2 weeks into it, middle of January is my mom's birthday, and she just made a really small comment of, "I really love these stories of reading who you're playing catch with," and that is all it took. That now I'm working on 2 books, and I decide I'm going to blog every single day about who I'm playing catch with. And so I at no actually, it was day 70. One of my writing mentors, his name is Robert Benson, and he called me and he said, "I just wanted to tell you that you are writing a book." I was like, "Well, of course I'm writing a book. I'm actually writing 2 right now. I don't know what you're talking about."
Yeah.
He says, "No, the most important book you're writing is playing catch." And it literally had not crossed my mind. I was obsessed with trying to find people who would be willing to play catch.
Mm-hmm.
We had a horrible winter, and it was a challenge. It was a blast.
So you started in January and cold. So tell everybody. Give. I mean, obviously, we don't want to spoil the book because it's coming out. I did see an interview that you did have with somebody. I don't remember who it was. You had a catch with some famous folks, some ball players. Give us a little bit about that.
Oh, there's so many. I played catch with, I think, every level of ball player. Some of the professional baseball players. Scott Bales, he had a 12, 13-year career, but he is from the Springfield area, and that was so. Excuse me. He was my baseball coach. He was my pitching coach back when I pitched in high school.
Okay.
I played catch with Jim Morris, who inspired the movie The Rookie,
and I've had him on the show. Cool. Very cool.
Such a neat guy.
Oh my gosh, yes.
Probably one of the quote famous ball players, Bill Verdon.
Sure.
He is one of the top Missouri names, but Gold Glove outfielder, won 1960 World Series, Rookie of the Year. I mean, your Phillies kept him out of the World Series in 1980. So that's some of the big ball players. Some of my favorite stories.
Yeah.
The couple times I played catch with women who played in the All-American Girls Professional Baseball League.
Love it.
I mean, their passion for the game still, so much fun.
Yeah, and I can only imagine, Ethan, again, the title of the book, What a Simple Daily Experiment Taught Me About Life, the conversations that you probably had were obviously impacted that catching experience. I mean, it was all encompassing, right? I can only imagine.
Yeah. Yes. And what happens is when your body and brain are distracted by focusing on the ball and thinking through what you have to do to throw a ball and to catch a ball coming at you, your gatekeepers that keep you from sharing some things are lowered.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're playing catch just so I can check another day off this quest. And all of a sudden they just start sharing stories. And what I had committed to them would take no longer than 15 minutes,
Right.
and now we're throwing a ball for 30 minutes,
Just-
for 40 minutes,
yeah.
and you just keep going, and you're just covered in sweat,
Yep.
and it was therapy that we were truly connecting on deeper levels while we were playing catch.
And that's how you just took, and again, I was going to say connecting like you just did. You know, I've had so many people on, authors especially, and they all, to a person, including Jim Morris, it's all about the people. It's all about relationships. And, you know, like Brad Baluchian, who did the Wax Pack book,
Mm-hmm.
you're telling stories of people, and not just as baseball players. So if you were talking about baseball players, you don't really care about the baseball player. You care about the person who happened to be a baseball player, correct? And from there, you get all these cool stories because you develop, I think, and I know what you're talking about. You develop it's a camaraderie. So when your defenses, like you said, are down, and you're having that catch, you're on the same plane. You're having catch with a friend, right?
Yep.
And that's what I feel like it was. Am I correct in that?
Yeah, you're right on. And some of my favorite things is every now and then I'll just be surfing along on Twitter or Facebook or whatever, and I'll see that somebody that I met simply because we played catch, their name's in the news. Or like our local fire chief won an award. Well, I played catch with him, and so I'll respond with like, "Hey, this was my catch partner. Look what he did." And it's just, but that joy of playing together. And one of the things that I learned as the year continued, we live in a culture that dissuades adults from playing. We think play is a child's activity, and it is a human activity.
Mm-hmm.
You can't be your best self if you don't intentionally take time to play. And that's what I had to do. I mean, I had to, every night at the dinner table, my wife and I and daughters would sit and be like, well, who are you playing catch with tomorrow? What time? Where? So who's going to drive who to which place? And so, I mean, it was the nightmare of coordinating calendars.
Mm-hmm.
And there were so many days where life happened. And so the catch partner would call and have to cancel.
Mm-hmm.
Can we reschedule? Well, of course we can reschedule. And so then I'm searching for that day. But, oh man.
So you mentioned. So do you talk about the importance of play in the book as as part of that life lesson?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, and it's
one of and especially for the season where we are as a country right now.
I was just thinking the same thing. Yep.
There's a nonprofit organization out of Colorado. It's called the National Institute of Play, and the executive director is Stuart Brown. And one of the things he writes is the opposite of play is not work. The opposite of play is depression.
Mm.
And so even though these are tense and uncertain and stressful times we're living in, for the good of ourselves, we have got to find time and create space to play.
Absolutely. I mean, and again, you were going. See, I think we are kindred spirits. I think every time you say something, I'm thinking the same thing. You have to get out and play. I mean, I don't know why I haven't texted some guys who I've played with, who if this Saturday is going to be in the mid 70s, why can't we just go have a catch?
Yeah.
Okay. Think about safety. Do we have to? It's a funny little snippet on Facebook today about playing baseball. This guy happened to be playing softball in this pandemic. It showed him at first base with a mask on, so the ball gets hit to him. Okay, he stops. He says before he goes to pick it up, stops, goes over to his Lysol wipes, pulls one out, wipes the ball clean. Right, to throw it to somebody else. He then goes pans to him in the dugout with a bat. he takes a spray can, he picks the bat and runs and throws a circle in the dirt as an on deck circle, then begins to spray himself all over, and he sprays the bat, and he gets his hands with gloves on the bat. I mean, it's really funny. But, all that aside, have a catch. Okay, so you bring some Purell with you, and when you're done having that catch, you put the Purell on, and you say, "Buddy,
Exactly.
thank you for having this catch. It was awesome." Yeah, because then you can have a conversation, and it's all about the relationship. So it took you. I read, was it 10,000 miles? Is that what it was?
12,000 miles
Okay.
in a 2000, 2000 something Kia Odyssey or Kia Sorento.
Okay.
Kia something.
We have a
Minivan.
Hey, we have a Sedona, buddy. We have a Kia Sedona.
Yes, thank you. A Sedona.
Ethan, I'm telling you, we got to get together, dude. Our
Sounds
brains
good to me.
it's just crazy. So you took the Sedona, and so did you leave home? How long did you leave? I'm envisioning you on the road but you weren't on the road for an entire year. Tell me how this all happened. Where were you? It sounds like you had to be.
We did 2 different 10-day trips. The first one we did just made a circle throughout the Midwest and went up to Kansas City and Omaha, Sioux Falls, over to Rockford and Chicago and St. Louis and back. And then we made a second trip down south all the way to Jacksonville, Florida, down to Orlando and back. And so those were the really big trips.
Okay.
And then I drove all over Arkansas and Missouri, and just looking for people who'd be willing to play.
And how did you do that? I mean, you're going all over the place. That's the big question I have is, okay, so you did these 10-day trips. You had to set this up ahead of time. You had to, like you said, you had people, I got to cancel. Oh, my gosh. Did you go knock on doors and say, hey, you want to have a catch? You want to be in a book? Or in a blog?
The majority of it was set up on social media,
Okay.
Just Twitter and Facebook. And sometimes, I'd play catch with somebody and say, oh, well, you've got to meet this person and play catch.
Mm-hmm.
One of the awkward stories, I met a guy and he said, oh, I know someone who would just die for the opportunity to play catch with you. I was like, well, just text me their number. And so he texted me the number. And like I said, flip phone. And this is one of those learning lessons. So I just I texted the number and said, Tom said that you'd be interested in playing catch. And I said, well, who is this? I'm sorry. My name's Ethan. Trying to play catch every day. Would you be interested? I'm like, man, it's been a while, but that sounds like something I'd like to do.
Okay.
It's like, well, great. What's your schedule like? When can we meet? Well, said this day, this time, this place. So we agreed. And I always tried to get there early so people wouldn't be waiting on me.
Mm-hmm.
I get there and stretch out, start walking around, and I'm not seeing anyone. And it's all of a sudden this lady walks up to me and says, hi, my name's Sarah. Are you Ethan? And I was like, you really don't look like Brian. I thought I was supposed to, and the original person had texted me a wrong number.
Oh, my
And
gosh.
so I played catch with a complete stranger, and I said, why in the world did you say yes? Well, I'm a ball fan. I just thought it sounded good playing catch.
Got lucky on that one, didn't you? That's crazy.
Yeah. Yep. So there's stories like that throughout the years.
That's just nuts.
Yeah.
Did you so how much rain did you had to run into?
Gosh. About 10 years ago, the Weather Channel did a study, and they declared that Springfield, Missouri is the number one place of greatest weather variance.
Wow.
And what that means is when you say, wait 10 minutes and the weather will change, you're talking about Springfield.
Really?
So, it is crazy. So there were multiple times. What was really neat, on day 100, I connected with this guy named Ryan. And Ryan owns a baseball training facility, Sty Sports Center. It's about 20, 25 minutes away from me.
Uh-huh.
And so he and I, he actually played and was one of the managers in that men's league I was telling you about.
Okay, yeah. Mm-hmm.
He played collegiate baseball. He's a fantastic player, catcher. And so he and I go out there, and I get to throw just a short bullpen session to him, and we're talking and everything. And he basically said, if you ever need an indoor place, let me know, and I'll make it work out.
Ooh.
And he helped me find catch partners throughout the year. I got to play catch with minor league stars, and just some of his connections with a guy who's a batting coach in the Dodgers organization. And
Nice.
he set me up with all these people. But his generosity, I always had it in the back of my mind that if the weather was too bad, I could get to Ryan's place and he would help me out. And that was a safety net.
Yeah,
that was really cool. But
yeah. Mm-hmm.
But there was one day, it was probably July or August, and we had a summer storm, and it was just lightning and thunder and pouring. And the guy I was playing catch with, his name was Cody. He was like, I don't care. Let's just go get soaked. And so we did.
Yeah.
it was fun. I mean, it made you feel young, and you got done, and you're like, I am drenched.
And that's just part of your experience. It wasn't all, ice cream and cookies. It was, you had to deal with it, but you didn't really care because you were having a catch, and that's the most important thing. It was to you. Did you ever get on the mound and throw?
Yeah, I did at Field of Dreams. And I threw a couple. Actually, one of my partners, his name is Taiki, Taiki. He is from Japan.
Ooh, okay.
And he came to Springfield as part of his sister cities organization to perform in a taekwondo demonstration.
Okay.
And they fill out these sheets so that they can partner them with host homes. And so on his sheet, all it said was baseball in capital letters with exclamation point. Well, I had played catch with the female of the household, with the woman of the house, and she said, you have to meet Taiki. He's a catcher for his college.
Oh, wow.
Kokushikan, I think, University. And so we met, and I brought a catcher's mitt, and we talked it over, and signs are the same, pitchers' signs are the same internationally. And I got a pitch for probably, at least 15 minutes, just a really good session until it started to rain too hard, and it wasn't good anymore. But that was pretty fun.
That is awesome. So let me ask you about your arm during this time. Did you have a supplier of ice?
So like I said, I'm a writer, and I've been a writer now for 12 years, 10, 12 years. The muscles that I use to write, none of them are used in playing catch.
How shocking is that?
Yeah, exactly. And I'm in decent shape.
Right.
I mean, I can do my pull-ups and my push-ups and stuff. And that first month, actually, it was longer than that. It was probably the key combination was ibuprofen and icy hot.
There you go.
And I bet I went through a bottle of icy hot a week for. I mean, I'm not joking. It was shoulder, it was bicep, tricep, elbow, forearm, and it was starting to get into March, and I was like, man, I remember thinking I am too old. These muscles just aren't gonna come around, and it took a long time, a lot of stretching, but by June, July, man, I was feeling good. By the end of the year, you could see there was a noticeable difference between the size of my right arm and the size of my left arm.
I believe that for sure. I'm sure your shoulder was huge. I mean, shoulder and forearm. And your leg.
Yeah.
And, it's so funny. I mean, obviously pitching off the mound puts more strength. You need more leg strength. Did you ever cramp up? Did you ever have any issues while you were throwing?
I had one day. I was going to help. There was a local, just a little league team that was like having their practice day before their tryouts, and so I had agreed to help some of the coaches, and I was just going to play catch with players there, and if they needed me to hit ground balls or fly balls or whatever, I was just an extra adult on hand. And I was walking from the parking lot to the ball field, and I got some kind of cramp or pulled muscle in the middle of my back, and I remember it stole my breath. I mean, there was no rhyme or reason for it to happen, other than I am walking and I remember. I mean, I can still feel it in my lungs. There's just that sharp taking away my breath, and I get there, and the very first thing they do on these little league fields, how they have these portable mounds now.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, "I need you to help me pick up this mound." And I was like, "And this is how my life is going to end. I can't." That was that day, and the 3 or 4 that followed were tough. But literally, that was it. That was
Good.
the injury of the year.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, and listen, that back stuff will creep up on you who knows when. And it's just, yes, it's so, I mean, listen, people who are listening know that it's debilitating. And you're like, oh no, now what am I going to do? You always ask why? Why now? What the heck? What the hell did I do? Oh, you were just walking. Oh, that's all.
Breathed wrong.
Oh, exactly. Who was what age was the oldest and what age was the youngest you had as a catch partner?
So AJ was the very first mascot for the AA team, the Northwest Arkansas Nationals. So he was Strike the mascot, and he reached out to me probably February, March, and said he pitched in college, and so he said he wanted to play catch. He said he wanted me to play catch with his son too. So his son, Benton, was 20 months old, and okay, I was like,
20
no,
months. That's
so,
great.
Okay. So in my mind, I'm thinking, well, at least I'm playing catch with AJ to make it official.
Yes.
That way I get a real catch. And so I get there. Okay, let me tell you about this 20-month-old that can catch and has an arm. And I was like, oh, sorry, AJ, you're not needed. Just fine. and I was so impressed. So 20 months would have been the youngest.
Wow.
And I played catch with 3 people that were 90 years old.
90, yeah?
Yeah.
That's awesome.
One of the neatest one was the my parents' next door neighbor.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, he was our neighbor since I was in high school and beyond. So he'd always come over and check on us and, take care of my mom and dad and my sister. And we watched, oh gosh, so many playoff and World Series games together. And so probably October or so, I talked to him. I said, hey, if you're interested in the game, I'd be delighted to throw you in there for a day. And he finally looks at me, and he said something along the lines of, well, if I can share a drink with your dad afterwards, that sounds like a fair deal.
There you go.
So I said, all right, we're in.
Not too hard. That wasn't a hard deal, was it?
No. And he was so generous, so nice.
That's cool. So the book comes out in September. Unfortunately, we have to wait this long to read it. Can people pre-order it now, Ethan?
Absolutely. Pre-order. Okay. We're taking pre-orders. My best advice is, especially so now, is go find your favorite local bookstore.
Right.
And order from them.
Okay. And will you be, listen, September, who knows what? Do you have book tours scheduled at this point, or will you, do you think?
Nothing is scheduled.
Okay.
There's still a chance I might be looking to play ball again this fall.
Okay.
If the league happens, if I make the tryouts, all the ifs.
Yes.
But I am already thinking about ways to get out. one of the things I'd really like to do
Mhm.
that I think would be fun. I don't even know if it's possible. But what would be really cool? What about taking Boys and Girls Clubs kids and go to a minor league park and let them tour the park and then give them new gloves and go play catch on the field? And
Yeah.
how much fun would that be?
I know. That would be awesome. Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, listen, that kind of stuff will bring kids in, and that's what baseball really needs at this stage of the game.
Yeah, exactly.
So that you could listen, you could listen, and I'm being serious about this. You could be a catalyst for, kids. You push this out there to minor league ballpark teams and say, listen, here's an idea. What do you think once we get going, or maybe next year when we can play? I think they would love that.
I mean, that's to pass on the love of this fantastic game
Yep.
to the next generation. I that would mean so much to me personally, and to see them light up. And there's so many times I got to play catch with rookies, and they'd come up to me like, "I've never worn a glove before. I've never thrown a baseball before. How do you do this?" And when they finally catch one for the first time,
Oh
and
my
you just
gosh,
see
yes.
that look and you're like, "All right, we don't have to stop. We can keep going."
Yeah,
All right,
exactly,
I'm fine with it.
exactly.
Let's keep going.
All right, listen. I really want to thank you for coming on.
My pleasure.
It's been so much fun talking to you. I really feel like we are kindred spirits, from the car that we drive to the love of baseball and just wanting to have a catch. So, and I've told everybody this on my shows. At some point, we really have to meet. You and I
Definitely.
would have a definite purpose to meet, and that would be to have a catch. And
Right.
just-
So my question is, what glove are you bringing?
I'm bringing my. What do you mean?
I mean, what glove are you going to bring to our catch?
The only glove I have.
Only one?
I only got one, dude.
All right. What is it?
It's an outfielder's glove.
Okay.
Yeah.
Make, model, what?
I don't
Color?
I don't even it's your basic tan.
Okay.
I think it's a Rawlings. Yes, it's a Rawlings, and it's old, but it's my favorite. I love it.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
So we'll have to get together and do that at some point. We will definitely keep in touch. I can't wait till the book comes out to read about all this, and maybe Ethan, listen, maybe when it comes out, you can come back on again and talk about it.
Oh, I'd be delighted. Hey, make sure you let me know when you're heading west.
I will. I'll tweet that out to you, or I'll email you. I have your email. I'll let you know for sure. Absolutely.
I would be delighted.
All right, terrific. Ethan, my friend, be well, stay well. Hope your family stays well. Thanks again for coming on. It's been a pleasure of mine to talk to you. It's been a pleasure since we decided to do this. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, man.
All right, buddy. Thanks again, and we'll talk soon.
All right. Have a good night.
Take care. You too. Bye-bye.
Bye.
All right, great conversation. Great conversation with Ethan. We do have a lot in common, and that's a lot of fun. And that baseball catch does bring people together. Doesn't take a lot to have a conversation when you put a ball in two people's hands. It's just like you said, everything, all the barriers come down, and you can talk and have any kind of conversation you want. So I want to thank Ethan again for coming on, talking about his book coming up, A Year of Playing Catch, What a Simple Daily Experiment Taught Me About Life. And Ellen Adair and Eric Gildy and their podcast, Take Me Into the Ball Game. Appreciate you being here with me. Replays will be up probably tomorrow if you missed any part of the interviews. Really appreciate the opportunity to be here again. Wishing you all a healthy and safe week. And we will be back next week with some more fun sports talk, possibly some baseball, most likely baseball, but we may throw some other stuff in. Everybody have a good week. Take care now. Thanks for tuning in. 12 on Sports, The Berm with Mitch. Bye-bye.
And good evening, everybody. Welcome to another edition of the Captain Lou Extravaganza, live here on the 12 Ounce Sports Network. Hope your weekend, your past weekend was pretty darn good. Mine was, I'd have to say, not too bad, considering the conditions we're all in. I want to say a special prayer to all of our friends in the Freeland, Michigan area over by Midland. Some flooding going on over there. I know a couple of rivers are about ready to go, so our hearts and prayers, our thoughts and prayers are out with them over in Freeland area, Midland in that area. Hope everything works out pretty good for you. We got an absolute jam-packed show for you here tonight. Joining us here shortly is going to be Craig Barnett. He is the ACHA's executive director. Lots going on in their world as their year is wrapped up. They're already looking ahead to 2020/2021, so Craig is kind enough to stop by. At 8:30, Mark Van Vliet, the Director of Hockey Operations for Aquinas College, and my tag team partner on the play-by-play broadcast will stop by. We'll talk some hockey with him at the bottom of the first hour. At 9 o'clock Eastern Time, a very special guest, first time we've had him on the show, Nikita Koloff, the Russian Nightmare of an NWA, National Wrestling Alliance Hall of Famer. He's going to stop by. We're going to talk some pro wrestling back in the 80s, like we've done with all the other sports here on the show. So really excited to talk to Nikita and get his thoughts on wrestling in its heyday, or back in the golden age, if you will, back in the 1980s down in the Georgia Championship Wrestling area. So really looking forward to talking to Nikita at 9 o'clock. And at 9:30, we're going to be joined by Jeff Disher, one of our friends of the program. We're going to wrap up the talk of The Last Dance documentary on Michael Jordan. We'll go over that with him. And I know he's been watching Game 6, I believe, of the 98 championship game. I believe that's what, 97 or 98 of the he wants to talk a little about that, so we'll pick his brain on that and whatever else is going on in the world of sports. So again, a very, very busy show tonight, and we are super excited to have you a part of it here tonight. Hey, a quick reminder that if you're looking to freshen up your look for this summer, you have to check out our 12 Ounce Sports new line of clothing. We've got everything from shirts to sweaters, beach towels, phone cases, you name it. Find the store online at 12ouncesportsradio.com under the Our Sports tab. There you'll find a wide variety of clothing items, colors, sizes that suit your style. That's 12ouncesportsradio.com under the Our Store tab. So again, lots going on here tonight, and we want to thank everybody for joining us here on the 12 Ounce Sports broadcast tonight of the Captain Lou Extravaganza. And without further ado, let's get to our guest line. And on the other end of our line is the Executive Director of the ACHA, Craig Barnett. Craig, thanks again for coming back on the show. How are you tonight?
I'm doing great, Lou. I'm doing great. I hope you and everybody listening in is staying safe and doing well.
Well, I think we're all getting by. You know, Craig, when you took the job as executive director a couple of years ago, did you think that you would have to, was a pandemic a part of your resume?
No, it's never part of the resume, but I think it's part of a lot of people's resumes now. And as I talk to different people in different roles, I think managers in any industry today, you know, we're all going to be better managers after this situation, you know, with the experiences we had to deal with and, you know, all the adversity that we're dealing with. You know, it's making us all better people and communicate better. And, you know, so there's a silver lining to it, but certainly wish it didn't happen.
Oh, 100% agree on that. You know, and it's funny, even though that the unfortunate thing of the national tournament being canceled, your job did not stop in March. I know it started out, you guys had a nice event about a month ago, I believe it was with your virtual combine in conjunction with the Washington Capitals youth hockey. And talking with Steve Hijek, it sounded like it turned out to be a smashing success for you guys.
Yeah, you know what? I think there's a lot of, you know, because of the situation, you know, people are doing, you know, companies and in the hockey business, certainly different different programs are doing things a little differently just to adapt to this situation. The Washington Capitals have had this very, very successful college fair for 13 years. And, it's always been like a traditional showcase. The prospective students and families go to the rinks and the coaches go to the rinks and everything takes place there, we've been engaged with a lot of showcases at college fairs. It's an opportunity for us to tell our story and who the ACHA is. We worked with the Blackhawks and helped get theirs going last year, and it's been a real big success. But because of the situation, the Caps, wanted to keep the fair and be able to share information with all these, local prospects, and they added this virtual piece to it. So, now that virtual piece was put in place, it's been an opportunity for many ACHA programs outside of that DC, Maryland, Virginia area now to partake in it. I think we had 13, 14, maybe 15 schools traditionally part of that CAPS fair, but because of the virtual add-on now, we had 44 ACHA members, 22 men programs and 22 women programs partake in the fair. So it was a huge success for us just to be involved. And hats off to the Washington Capitals and Jesse, who runs that program for them, and Steve Hychek, who's been part of that program for many, many years. Hats off to them. It's a great program, and the most important thing is you have a lot of prospective hockey players, in that area now that have been able to look at different opportunities outside that local regional area that they traditionally would look at. So it's a win-win for everybody. Again, we found the silver lining in this very challenging times.
Oh, definitely. Like you said, it was a huge success, and it helps spread the word of the ACHA. And Craig, I was reading today on the website, and it struck me. We're coming up on 30 years, the 30-year anniversary of the ACHA, and what an exciting milestone for everybody. You look back, April 20th, 1991 is when it all started, and it's just taken off. You're, in 46 out of the 50 states now, and, man, it's come a long way, and it's very exciting.
Well, it's just so exciting to be part of it. As you said, just completed my second year in this role, and now to look forward to next year and be the 30th year anniversary is, it's awesome. We are planning some big ways to celebrate it. We're going to bring our divisional commissioners back into the fold here and discuss what we can do at each different level. We are going to, it's kind of neat for me to be part of this, but we have reached out. We're going to do a Zoom meeting with a panel of about 10 people that were instrumental from day one in the ACHA, the Tom Keegans and the Marcel Stevensons and a whole bunch of others that, have really the building blocks, Don Spencer and people like that, the building blocks of the ACHA. And we're going to have some fun and have a friend of yours, Rasty McGibbon, be our moderator and talk to people and hear some stories. Joe Batista and Al Murdoch and, Dan Morris from OU. So Craig McCarthy from OU. So, we're looking forward to learning what happened, how did it start, the early steps, more importantly, the great stories. Zoe Harris, who started the women's division in the year 2000, is going to be part of this panel as well. So we're going to record that and then use that, throughout the summer here as we get ready to celebrate year 30.
Boy, that's going to be an exciting program. Just do yourself a favor. Get a shot clock for Rasty so he doesn't go a little bit overboard, all right?
He might be the most excited person because he's been around for a long time, but not that far back, so he's been asking a lot of questions and excited to be reaching out to these founders of the ACHA and being able to talk to them. And we know Rasty can certainly lead in and get the best out of people. So we're excited to have him involved as well.
Oh, yeah, it sounds like it's going to be a great time. We're joined by Craig Barnett, the executive director of the ACHA here on the Captain Lou Extravaganza tonight. So another exciting thing you've got coming up, Craig, next month is the ACHA coaches have been invited to take part in the NHL Coaches Association clinic. It's online, of course, like everything else, but it looks like a very, very well put together 5-day event.
Well, it's very special, because of the people that are involved. One, it's really cool to be, part of be invited by the NHL Coaches Association for our coaches to take advantage of this. It's all about developing and professional developing, and coaching world in every sport's a small fraternity. We were invited last month, in the month of April. The NHL Coaches Association rolled out a series of webinars where it was more like X's and O's and so forth. They had head coaches, assistant coaches of the NHL. I think they ran definitely three, maybe four of these a week throughout the whole month of April. And our coaches, we had 220 coaches in the ACHA participate in that program. And, we were very thankful to Lindsay Arkin, who ran this program for the NHLCA. And now, this global series that they're having is, again, it's the best of the best. And certainly there's an investment for any coach to attend this, but it's certainly an investment in their coaching career. And we hope that some of our ACHA coaches will take part in this and be part of that program.
Now, Craig, I got to ask you, with the pandemic situation and everything that's going on with the other leagues postponed along with yours, and I know you guys are already thinking about 2020/21, and I know it's a long ways out, but how often do you monitor the situation? Do you think about maybe updates and when you might have to do a postponement of the starting of the season, heaven forbid, or what kind of a game plan do you have with that?
Yeah, it's an everyday thing, Lou. We've been monitoring it now for quite a while. I don't think we stopped, from the time we had to cancel the national tournament, which is one of the toughest things, anybody in a leadership role or management role in sports had to do. But we really haven't stopped monitoring that. We how often? I'm on that CDC website at least 3 times a day. We're monitoring the higher education, all the different resources they have, certainly what the colleges and universities are doing. We're monitoring the NCAA, and there's a lot of resources out there. As you know, if you're a college football fan, you can find 500 people that are saying that college football is going to start on time, and you can find 500 other people that are saying, there's not a chance that we're going to start. So, what we've been doing, our executive staff, Mo Stromo, Dave Kurtz, myself, basically every week we've been talking, we have a meeting every week just to discuss contingency plans. We're trying to be as proactive as we can right now in terms of, looking at all the different variables that might come into play and when we might be able to start. And build some parameters around some contingency plans based on different starting dates. The more proactive we can be right now, the less reactionary we would have to be once once the restart happens. For us, very similar to the NCAA, we're not the ones that are making the plan to restart. That's in our business, with college athletes. Those decisions are made by the colleges and universities, and they're following local government, regional government, those types of regulations. And we're going to have schools starting in the, different regions of the ACHA starting at different times. They got to figure out when they can have students back on campus, if they're going to be online in the fall or on campus in the fall. Then they have to figure out, when it's safe to have sports and when it's safe to bring fans back onto campus to watch sports. So all these questions that the colleges need to figure out on their own. And then once we know what, our membership is facing, then, hopefully we'll have a plan in place to react to that. So it's an ever moving, fluid thing that we're monitoring to make sure that we have something in place. And I think the month of June is going to be a very critical time for a lot of colleges. We're seeing now that schools are making decisions. This past week, There's several schools that are saying they're going to start back on campus on time, but when the kids go home for Thanksgiving, they're not going to have any more on campus classes until the new year. So after from Thanksgiving to Christmas, they're going to then revert back to online classes until the new year. So all different kinds of twists going on right now, and that's what we need to know. Lou, we had a town hall meeting with our membership Sunday night, and one of the big messages to our membership is, please be engaged with your school. Know what's going on, ask questions, engage into it, and share that information with us so we have the best information possible to react to a plan.
Now, is there a rule, Craig, in the ACHA where if the school, like, for example, from say they just shut her down from Thanksgiving to Christmas, or that's the end of the semester, can you still play games even though the semester is over as a school, or do you have to wait till they're back in session?
Well, we that's up to the school.
Okay.
I think some schools would have different rules or regulations around that, because if you're, some schools might not have the resources on campus if they, don't allow the students to come back, for sports teams to come back and compete. It's about player safety and the health of those students and those student athletes and the coaches and so forth. Whereas on the other hand, maybe some schools, are in a position to allow their athletes to continue to compete, but they're just, restricting online classes from happening. So again, we need to know that information, how schools are handling this, so we could help and assist and be a resource to continue, hopefully, our season and put some parameters in place.
Well, last question for you, Craig, and I'll let you go. I'm always thinking 100% positive, so let's look forward to next year. Are you getting excited to go into Boston next year for the Nationals?
I think it's this is an important piece for me, right? So having been part of the junior hockey loop at the North American Hockey League and that big September showcase that they have in Blaine, Minnesota, where they bring in 115 teams, the whole junior leagues under one roof at one time. And that's kind of how I'm envisioning this for us. The ACHA has done a great thing, having a national tournament with all 5 divisions in one location. And that's been a great thing, a great experience for our student athletes. But in Columbus and in Dallas, they did a great job hosting, but, being in one location means in those cities, utilizing 3 or 4 different rinks throughout the city. Boston, with the New England Sports Center in Marlborough, Mass, has they actually have 10 rinks now under one roof, 8 NHL and 2 smaller surfaces. So this is a chance for us to be in one location, but also under one roof. And that national tournament will be 6 days long. That's it. So we'll have 5 divisions all playing under one roof at the same time, 3 of those 6 days during the tournament. So the goal is to make it exciting for the fans, a lot going on, a lot of hockey to watch. The student athlete experience being in that type of festive atmosphere is hopefully what we're going to capture. And will it be chaotic a little bit? Yeah, but it'll be an organized chaos, and that's also a great thing, for sports. So my hope is that the student athletes that may not have experienced something like this under one roof at the same time will enjoy that environment.
Well, Craig, you got me fired up already. I'm ready for it to get here. I know it's still 9 months away, and you got a lot to go before that. So, hey, thanks for taking time out of your busy schedule tonight. I know you've been very busy lately. Have a great summer, Craig, and hopefully we can hook back up with you in the fall once the season starts up.
Hey, thanks for having me on, Lou. I appreciate that. And, hi to everybody out there, and stay safe and be kind.
All right. Thank you, Craig. Craig Barnett, the executive director of the Craig Barnett, the executive director of the ACHA, kind enough to join us here on the Captain Lou Extravaganza. Big plans happening for the ACHA. They're going to Boston for the national tournament, and let's keep our fingers crossed that that's going to happen. I think it's going to. I think we're going to get over this pandemic for sure, and we'll get back to playing hockey and all the other sports coming up in this year. It might be a little bit delayed for some of the sports like football and baseball or whatnot, but hey, we're going to get it done. And a big thanks to Craig. He does a fantastic job. The ACHA coming into its 30th year. And as you know, if you follow this program, we're big into the ACHA, and we're going to keep doing what we do with them, with the coaches, and with getting the players and the coaches on each week here on the Captain Lou Extravaganza. We're going to step aside when we come back. In about 10 minutes, Mark Van Vliet will be joining us, and then at 9 o'clock, the Russian Nightmare, Nikita Koloff, NWA Hall of Famer, is going to join us, and then at 9:30, Jeff Disher as well, talking The Last Dance documentary. We're going to take a break. We'll be back in 2 minutes here on the Captain Lou Extravaganza on the 12-Ounce Sports Network.
Esports are here to stay. Go to jazzsports.ag, log into your account, and look for our new esports section on the top of your screen. Browse through all the different available matches and watch them live with our exclusive esports betting platform. Get instant access to game results, pending and graded bet reports, outright bet types, and upcoming match schedules, all at the easy reach of your fingertips. Jazz Sports puts you in the game.
DrinkAid, ready for distribution worldwide.
Nothing makes us happier at Lexington Law than when our clients cancel our services. Listen to this client call and see what we mean.
Lexington Law Firm, this is Erin.
I would like to cancel my account.
I'm sorry to hear that.
No, don't be. Actually, you guys have done tremendous work for me, and I was working with you for several years now. And my goal was to get a mortgage written by the end of this year, and I just got that mortgage commitment.
That is wonderful.
My credit went from like 440 working with you guys to 700.
Nice.
And I got a very good 4.25% 30-year fixed rate mortgage. I have nothing at all bad to say. If you ever want me to write a testimonial, well, I will. As a matter of fact, I've recommended you to a lot of friends.
Lexington Law has served over 500,000 clients, taking expert action on their credit that has led to the removal of millions of questionable negative items from their credit reports. Call now and learn more about how Lexington Law may be able to help you in the removal of negative items from your credit report, such as collections, late payments, charge-offs, and many others. Call Lexington Law today.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Captain Lou Extravaganza Live here on the 12-Ounce Sports Network. Hey, this reminder that live sports may feel like it's on hold to you. Although some of them are coming back, it's not on hold at mybookie.ag. They've got tons of action for you to get in on the fun at mybookie.ag. Whether esports or overseas baseball is your thing. NASCAR started back up, by the way. I think they've got a race tomorrow night, as a matter of fact, as they're trying to catch up on their season. They've got you covered when you use the promo code 12-Ounce Sports at mybookie.ag when making a deposit. They'll match your first deposit up to $1,000 too, by the way. Don't feel like watching baseball at 2 in the morning. They've got you covered with their online casino as well to scratch that itch. Go to mybookie.ag and use the promo code 12-Ounce Sports today for free money when you're making that first deposit. Well, we want to thank Craig Barnett, the Executive Director of the ACHA, for stopping by here on the program. And again, a lot of stuff going on with them. They've got that NHL Coaches Clinic where they're going to participate within it. And even better, it's the 30th anniversary of the ACHA, 30th year, starting up in 1991. So that's coming up. It'll be a big celebration culminating with the national tournament all under one roof next year, just outside of Boston, Massachusetts, home of the Boston Bruins. So it should be a fun year coming up in the ACHA. We're really looking forward to it. And I know that when we talked to Mark Van Vliet, the Director of Hockey Operations for Aquinas College, also my play-by-play man for the broadcasts of their ACHA D1 hockey team, I know he's looking forward to it as well. Speaking of the seasons, we'll take a quick step into the professional ranks. The talk still continues of when are they going to open up. Now, with the NHL, it sounds like they're inching closer to probably a 24-team tournament this year, a Stanley Cup tournament. The bottom 6 teams are probably going to be on the outside looking in, and not really surprised that that's going to happen with, I know Detroit is so far out of it, and of course, Ottawa's not too far behind. There are some teams that are close to the bubble, but it's looking like that they're going to get 24 teams in. The question is, where are they going to do it? Again, you hear everything from North Dakota, Vegas. Now I'm hearing Edmonton might be thrown into the mix, possibly British Columbia. Who knows? In Vancouver area, I should say. Some of the cities are starting to open back up. Toronto might be in the mix. Some of the other cities in the States. We'll have to wait to be seen with that. Baseball, that one's the one that's gaining a lot of traction right now as well. The owners approved a plan to send over to the players. Now I think the big hookup, the big hang-up, I guess you would say, is going to be money. The ownership wants to go to some type of 50-50 revenue split, and the players do that. They're, in a sense, probably going to take a pay cut, and I just don't know if that – it's funny is I'm going to side with the players on this one. It's just still they're not looking very good in all of this. I mean, what I don't understand is Tony Clark, some of the things he's saying. He's just really ripping on the owners, and the players don't want, or the public doesn't want to hear it. Obviously, they just want to see games being played. But there are so many restrictions going into that. How many times they're going to be tested? The health of it, just keeping everybody safe and sequestered and whatnot. If they go on a road trip, they can't leave the hotels. They can't take a cab to the game. They all got to drive the same bus. They can only eat in a designated area in the clubhouse. At the hotels. There's going to be no meals there's going to be no food at the stadium for the players. They may not even shower there after the game's over. They might have to wear their uniforms back to the motel or home to shower up. A lot of crazy stuff going on with Major League Baseball right now. So anyways, let's get back to our phone lines, our guest line, and on the other end of the line is my tag team partner, Mark Van Vliet, the director of hockey operations for Aquinas College. Mark, how the heck are you?
Lou, I am doing well tonight. I must tell you, I feel a little intimidated. I'm sandwiched between some amazing guests that you have on your program. In the old days, I thought I was sort of a big deal when I got on your program, but now I feel like a small fish in a big pond. I mean, Craig Barnett, and then you got the professional wrestling after me, and it's like, goodness sakes, I'm lucky to get a word in edgewise on your program.
Oh heck, no! You're one of the top bananas. You'll always be top billing on the show, Mark. You'd have nothing to worry about as far as that goes. You know that. So
Thank you, Lou.
So again, with all the craziness going on, how's everything in the world of Aquinas hockey right now?
Well, it continues to move forward. I speak with Coach Jordan, almost daily. We just posted a couple of signings, or one signing, I should say, that of some prominence, and we're waiting on a few more, and that's sort of a theme as I talk to some of the other coaches, Mike Petrus, Matt Calvin, and some of the other ACHA coaches around the league. This is the kind of year where junior leagues, they don't know if they're going to start on time. Some of the junior teams, and I'm talking tier 3 and tier 2, NA3 and NA, they don't know if they're going to, if certain teams are going to even have a season. So there are players that think they have homes that may not have homes. They are eligible to go to college, or they're looking to play their last year of junior. They're anticipating a full junior season, but again, that's up in the air. So we might get an influx of recruiting activity in June and July, as some of these junior teams rely solely on, or a large part of the revenue is on gate receipts, and some of these teams especially in the South, the Louisiana and Texas region, these guys, these teams generate 3,000, 4,000 attendees a game, and so a large part of their revenue is based on ticket sales. So if you're talking about a state that won't allow that type of gathering in the fall, what does that do to the junior team? How do they project their finances? Do they take a year off? Do they put their season on hold for the 2021 season on hold? And what does that do to the influx of recruits that come into the ACHA or NCAA for that matter? So, the jury's still out. A lot of confusion, as you might expect out there. And so we're just continuing to work the phones and look at film and dialogue with the players that we're interested in. But it's going to be very interesting, and I imagine our recruiting profile, our recruiting season, is going to go right up into the beginning of August. To be honest with you, Lou.
Have you ever had it that late before, Mark?
Well, we have in certain instances. We'll have somebody that we've recruited that may make a decision to go one place. He informs us of his intent, so we obviously honor that and stop the recruiting process. And then for whatever reason, in the midsummer, he changes his mind and calls us. So we've had a bit of that. But quite frankly, we've always said, by the end of our school year in May, we like to have our recruiting pretty well set for the following year. And in this case, because the school year, at least in-seat school year, ended in mid-March, that's been extended. That's not a hard and fast date anymore. And, the whole rhythm, the whole cycle has been interrupted here. So it's just, and everybody's dealing with this for the first time, and it's the same for everybody and different for everybody at the same time. So we're just sort of continuing our efforts into the summer, and we're optimistic. We have 3 or 4 guys on the hook here that we hope to have decisions one way or another in the next 2 to 3 weeks. But I would say our recruiting is going to go right into July, Lou.
Well, we're joined by Mark Van Vliet, the Director of Hockey Operations for Aquinas College, ACHA Division I national qualifier this past year. Mark, it's just like everybody else. Everybody's in the same boat. But I think, do you think you get maybe an advantage by, with the hockey season now not starting until the fall, the extra time for them to be able to decide if the season's going to start on time and maybe learn from a mistake or two that might be made, say, by baseball this summer or NHL or whatever? I mean, does that come into play at all?
Well, I'm just sort of dovetailing on what Craig Barnett said earlier in your broadcast. We sort of take although we're active and listening to the ACHA and the American Hockey Coaches Association, the HCA, and the NCAA. We listen to all those channels, and we're connected to the management in all those areas. But quite frankly, we have to take the leadership, and this is what I'm picking up with Craig Barnett. We're picking up on the leadership of our school. We're obviously an NAIA school, and so we're sort of taking the lead from them, and we're listening to what's coming out of Kansas City, the NAIA headquarters, and what's coming out of the athletic director Nick Davidson at Aquinas College. So we're sort of following that type of leadership there, because quite frankly, the ACHA can do whatever they want, or the American Hockey Coaches Association can say one thing, but if the schools don't, if the schools aren't in line, if the NCAA or if the NAI decide to go off in another direction, we're sort of bound to go in the direction of our school. So we're waiting. We're waiting on the directive from our school in a lot of cases, but we anticipate, and the encouraging news, and you're seeing this in baseball. I think you talked about it this week on some of your communication. Baseball is starting to make plans, and NHL starting to make, NFL starting to make plans, and NCAA football is starting to make plans. They're imperfect and they're fluid and they're moving. They're talking about half full stadiums or no attendance, but at least people are starting to project what it might look like midsummer, late summer, early fall. And I think, that's going to certainly change as the conversation continues. But the good news is that people are starting to plan and anticipate what it's going to look like coming up. And so, we sort of look at what's going on in the fall sports and in the summer sports, and we hope things, from a winter sport standpoint, following will be even more normal than it would be in the early fall, late summer type of sports. So we're encouraged by the conversations that we're hearing. People, I think, are, and you see it, even outside the world of sports, politically, people are frustrated. They want to get back to work. There's sort of a demand that's growing to say, hey, we want to return to, we want to return to normal. We want to get back to work, and I think that filters through into sports as well. So I think there's a real movement toward returning to normal. Maybe not the same normal, but the new normal, as they say. But I think a return to the consistency and the rhythm of life that included athletics, and I think we're encouraged by that.
Well, let's talk about watching hockey back when there was fans, and let's switch gears a little bit. I love the last conversation you and I had on the air about talking about hockey back in the 70s and 80s. Now, I was thinking the other day about, I never got a chance to see a game at Olympia, being from where I was from, and my first opportunity was Joe Louis, and I just would love to hear a story about getting a chance to see a game at Olympia. I watched them on TV, but they closed before I got a chance to go. What was it like to be right there, right on the ice, just about watching a game at Olympia Stadium?
Well, the one thing I would express to you and your viewers and those listening in is that if you saw a game at the Chicago Stadium, if you saw a game at Boston Gardens, Toronto Maple Leaf Gardens, at the old Montreal Forum, and Madison Square Garden, the arenas at that time had a consistency to them, and they were sort of a layered birthday cake type of a arena where the mezzanines were sort of cantilevered on top of each other, and what that did is it forced the crowd close to the rink, and it was sort of stacked up in layers of a cake, if you can sort of imagine that, and then of course the roofs were metal, and it reverberated the sound. So what that did is it gave you. They didn't seat a lot of people. I think if I can remember, the Olympia sat about 14,000, 15,000 maximum. I know the Garden, because I was there many, many times, sat about the same. But the noise level of an arena in that configuration was absolutely outstanding, and that's what made it so special. And I think also the time, if I can just go back a little bit to the 60s and 70s there, the time that in which it was played. If you look at that, if you look at those pictures, if you watch that, and I remember even in the late 80s going to the Boston Garden, it was almost as you watched the people file in, the men had suit and ties on, and the women were dressed up in their fur coats. It was an event, and it was just really something to behold during that time. And there was just something about that. It was a big deal, and And so I had a chance. My first NHL game was at the Olympia, and it was in college. And it was, I want to say 74, 75 season. That was in the Dead Wing era. And I think they won 8 or 10 games that whole year. And I had a chance to watch them play the Toronto Maple Leafs. And actually the wings behind the goaltending of Jimmy Rutherford, if you can remember him.
Wow, I sure can.
Yeah. And Wayne Thomas was the goalie for the Maple Leafs, but the Wings actually won that game, and it was just it was crazy. And it didn't matter what the standings were; it didn't matter, certainly to me at that time. It just was a experience of a lifetime, and so for me to see that first game in Toronto, and I remember, or in Olympia, and I remember the floors of the arena had red and white checked linoleum.
Wow.
And it was just sort of an event. And then years later, when I moved to the Boston, Massachusetts area and had a chance to see the Bruins in that same type of arena, I was older and had married at the time, or married again, and so what that did is that I got another level of appreciation for that, and it took me back to that early first game at Olympia. And I remember after watching that game in 74, 75 season against Toronto, the year after I went and saw the rings at Joe Louis, and I don't think there was 10,000 people there, and it's sort of ironic. You watched in the last couple of years this tribute to Joe Louis, and they tore it down, and there were people putting wreaths outside, and people were sort of waxing nostalgic over Joe Louis Arena. But when it opened, it was absolutely the critical negative reviews of Joe Louis were unbelievable. I mean, it was big, empty, hollow. It didn't, there was no sound to it. And it was really poorly received initially as an arena in the Detroit media. It was, and people were comparing it to the Olympia, of course, but Joe Louis it was not well received. It was terrible. And I remember reading about that and then going to and watching the game and the following year, and there wasn't 10,000 people in the stands, and you couldn't tell who was the home team and who was the away team. It was quiet, and you didn't have the energy. And of course, it was still the Dead Wings era. So the Dead Wings era transitioned into the Joe Louis, but again, you just had and I'm not sure that anything changed other than you took those same 10, 12,000 people and you put them in the Olympia, and it was electric. You put the 10, 12,000 fans in Joe Louis, and it was dead. And that was just reflective of the transition of the arenas. And obviously years later that changed, but it was different. But those old arenas were loud and intimate, and they had real character.
I think Detroit had one playoff year in the 70s. If I can remember, it was 77. I'll never forget it. Bobby Crom was the coach. I don't know if you remember that. They beat the Atlanta Flames in the opening round of the playoffs, best out of 3, and I'll never forget. They won. They played their next up. They played Scotty Bowman and the Canadiens, and they won the first game of that series. And then I can remember after that it was Montreal just took them out by the woodshed, and that was it.
That would be Guy Lafleur, Yvon Cournoyer, Larry Robin. I mean, forget it.
Oh,
forget
my
it.
goodness. Some names there, eh?
Yep.
Wow. And then it took Detroit how many years after that, but
I think 88 was the next time they qualified. And that was the infamous when Sean Burr and Joey Kosher and Bob Probert, they went out. That was in Edmonton, and they were seen at a disco at like 3 or 4 in the morning, and then they had to on a game night, And
Oh boy.
And oh boy, the media got a hold of that, and boy, that was something else. But they were on the they were a good time group, but they were on the verge of becoming good, but they hadn't had the maturity yet, and that showed that series because they got swept out. But they were the they were a group of characters that had to be reined in, and I think that's where Jacques Demers was shown the door, and they brought in the as you mentioned, Scotty Bowman to lend a little discipline to that, and I think that's obviously was the beginning of some great years in Detroit.
Well, remember, Mark, and what was it? I think it was 85 when Brad Park was the head coach, and he ordered all the team off the bench for a bench clearing brawl. I don't even know who they were playing, but that's the kind of teams Detroit had. Even before that, boy, there were some lean years.
Oh boy, yeah, I remember. I think 84 is when Mike Ilitch bought the team, and I remember listening to some of those early broadcasts, and he brought in, in addition to Steve Yzerman and some of those early draft years, they had some draft years where they were Chris Chahaki and Tim Friday, a lot of the college guys. They were really trying to change. And I think this is probably a little bit what the Detroit Lions are doing right now. They're trying to change the culture, and then before they even could think about being competitive, they had to change the culture, and I think that's what Ilitch was trying to do early on. And there was a revolving door of players, but I remember he brought in 7 or 8 players right off the bat after he bought the team, and really announced to not only to the organization, but to the fan base as a whole, that this was going to be a new day in town. There's a new sheriff in town, and we're going to clean this up, and we're going to have a real professional franchise.
Well, they did that for sure. Last question for you, Mark. It's back in the 80s, the style of play. I can remember that series with Edmonton. It was just like that Montreal series where Detroit won that first game in that series against the Oilers. But then again, after that, it was just, Gretzky and Messier and Grant Fuhr, and they just, they just took a stranglehold on it. But the high flying, the scoring back then was, what a time that was. And now it's so much different with the defensive style,
Yeah, it really was different, Lou. And I was talking to Jordan, Coach Pomoto, about this the other day, but I was watching, and I really, one of the message to your fan base there would be, I hope you get a chance during this this period that we're living in. They're replaying some of those old games, those old series, 72 Stanley Cup, 74 Stanley Cup, and I hope you can appreciate how. And you just saw. You've talked about it on your show, the documentary, The Last Dance, and they talked about the Piston and Chicago Bull rivalry, and you saw some of those clips and how physical, the NBA used to be at that time, and how physical the NHL was at that time. And people, I mean, there's certainly a degree of physicality and athleticism to it today, and in fact, even from an athleticism standpoint, probably a heightened level. But the physical play in the 70s and 80s was just, it was really something that took your breath away on how rough the NHL was. And if you can watch some of those Stanley Cup playoffs between the Flyers and the Bruins in the early 70s, and it's just something else. But and the other thing I was watching the other day that Fox had on was the I want to say the 2002 Stanley Cup champion, Detroit championship. And I want to say there was 8 Hall of Famers on that team.
Wasn't that something,
and yeah, it was like men playing with boys in that series. And, people forget, and this is really a message to what we're going through now and the cancellations of the season. The NHL is no stranger to a shortened or a canceled season, right? And pre 2003, 2004 was when the NHL had a lockout, and the financial, there was, people forget that before that there was no cap on salary, and so Mike Ilitch was really free to spend whatever he needed to spend to get an NHL team, and that really has been lost in people's memory. But you look at the team that was assembled there in the early 2000s. I mean, Luc Robitaille and was a fourth liner.
Isn't that
fourth
amazing?
Liner. He was a Hall of Famer who's had a tremendous career with the LA Kings. Brett Hull. I mean, I could go on Larry Murr. I mean, they just went on and on and on. And I'm watching and I'm listening to the play-by-play of who, as they kind of call the play of the puck movement and who's gotten the puck. And I'm just thinking, Hall of Fame, Hall of Fame, Hall of Fame, Hall of Fame, Hall of Fame. It's just unbelievable. You will never see that gathering of talent on one team ever again in the history of the National Hockey League. And it was really, if anybody gets a chance to watch that series, it really is a treat, because I mean, Dominik Hasek, I mean, just throw another one in there, right? I mean, it's just crazy how much talent was there on that team. And it was so fun to watch. But that's pre-2004, where you could buy, much as the Yankees continue to do, you could buy a championship in a lot of ways when it came to that. And then obviously post lockout, things are much different. But I think the payroll, the cap, I think the Wings ended that year with an $85 million in the neighborhood annual payroll. This is in 2002, 2003. And I think after the strike season, I think the cap was like $45 million.
Yeah.
So people they had to redo every contract. They had to realign everything. People were there were players making $10, $12 million a year that were reduced to $4 and $5 and $6 million a year. And not that I feel sorry for any of them, Lou, but just a real adjustment in the economics of the league. But then, as they say, a rising tide lifts all boats, and now the league has come all the way back and up, and together rather than just one rich team and one poor team. So there's a continuity to it that makes it much more interesting, I think, across the board. But those were different days and fun to watch. And I hope people, as they watch some of those old reruns, can get a real appreciation for you. And Lou, I'd like to leave you with one story if I can. Is that possible?
I got about a minute. Go ahead.
Well, it's okay. So this is I'll make it short. During the 2004 season, when people were frustrated, and the strike was on and nobody knew what was going on, I thought, and I'm sitting here in Grand Rapids. I thought, I'm going to call Ken Holland and see if, just inquire about where we are in the negotiations. And I got through to Olympia Entertainment and subsequently through to his secretary. And I said, hey, I'm just Mark Van Vliet from Grand Rapids, and I'm a Red Wing fan, and I'd like to know a little bit about the strike and where we are and if there's going to be a season. And she said, well, Mr. Van Vliet, I'll take your information. I'll forward it on to Ken Holland. Well, I thought there's no chance that Ken Holland would ever call me back. Well, about 20 minutes later, my phone rings, and sure enough, it was Ken Holland calling me back. And I'll never forget that conversation. We talked for about 15 minutes about the strike, about the NHL. And he said, I said, hey, Mr. Holland, I'm just a fan of the game, a former player, but really just a fan of hockey, and really concerned about where we are in the strike and in where we are in professional hockey. And he was very, he was so nice, and he went out of his way. And so he would call me back and just talk about hockey. And we had a great conversation for about a half hour. Fantastic. And I'll tell you that there's no secret why the Red Wings had the success they had. Ken Holland, a great GM. Was a great GM in Detroit. He's going to be a great GM in Edmonton. I think it's going to be fantastic. So good for him. And well, Lou, we look forward to another great season and sitting with you doing play-by-play. So
I look forward to it.
That's all I got for tonight.
Mark, thanks. I look forward to it. Thanks for the stories yet. And they say Ken Holland was a bad GM in the last couple of years.
Oh,
Whatever.
that's that. You couldn't be farther from the truth.
100% agree. Mark, Thanks again for joining us tonight. We'll get you on down the road a little bit. Once the hockey season starts back up for the NHLers, we'll get you on and we'll talk about that. How's that sound?
Lou, I'm already looking forward to it.
All right. Thanks, Mark. Mark Van Vliet, the Director of Hockey Operations for Aquinas College, stopping by and, again, telling us stories. And he's right about that 2002 season, by the way. They were so loaded. I can remember a story I heard. Brendan Shanahan they interviewed him, and at the beginning of the series, they were doing the pre-skate around the rink, and you could tell they looked and they all stared at him. Everybody looked at their line as they went by. He said, we knew we had them beat right away. They were so intimidated by us. And it just made me laugh. And they even won a game against Carolina won a game against the Red Wings, even though after that, but you could tell. And he's right. 8 Hall of Famers on that team, probably should have had 9. Chris Osgood, I still say, should be a Hall of Famer for the Red Wings. I want to thank Mark Van Vliet for joining us on the program tonight. Hey, this reminder again real quick. If you're looking to freshen up your look for this summer, check out 12 Ounce Sports' new line of clothing. We've got everything from shirts to sweaters to beach towels and phone cases. Find the store online today at 12ouncesportsradio.com under the Our Store tab. There is where you will find a variety of clothing items, colors, and sizes that suit your style. That's 12ouncesportsradio.com. That's under the Our Store tab. And you were talking about the Red Wings and back in the Olympia days in the 70s and the 80s and how bad it was. They had to give away a car every night just to get people into Joe Louis. So anyways, we're going to take a break. When we come back, we will have our next guest, Nikita Koloff, here on the 12 Ounce Sports Captain Lou Extravaganza.
Esports are here to stay. Go to jazzsports.ag, log into your account, and look for our new esports section on the top of your screen. Browse through all the different available matches and watch them live with our exclusive esports betting platform. Get instant access to game results, pending and graded bet reports, outright bet types, and upcoming match schedules, all at the easy reach of your fingertips. Jazz Sports puts you in the game.
Drinkade, ready for distribution worldwide.
And welcome back to the Captain Lou Extravaganza live here on the 12 Ounce Sports Network. Captain Lou in the chair here as we're just about to start the second hour of the show. And let's get back to the guest line. And we're joined by a very special guest here, Nikita Koloff, the Russian Nightmare back in the 80s from WCW days. NWA Hall of Famer, taking time out, gracious to take time out of his busy schedule. Nikita, how are you? Thanks for joining us.
Hey, Captain Lou, comrade Captain Lou. Hey, is there an Albano on the end of that or no?
Well, I can't do that, Nikita. I will only borrow his line. I'll say custom made from head to toe, baby. Often imitated, never duplicated. So.
I like it, Captain Lou. I like it. Hey, great to be with you and all your listeners out there tonight.
Hey, I got to ask you, first off, how close were you actually to going to, instead of pro wrestling, going into the USFL?
Well, I was training for that tryout when I got the call from Road Warrior Animal, and he laid out the storyline of a nephew for Ivan Koloff And, I was kind of months away from that tryout, and I thought, well, I'll give it a shot. Why not? I mean, if some of those guys can do it, yeah, maybe I can too, even though, no training, no background for it. But, I had an athletic background, so I thought, well, hey, maybe I can make it go. And, of course, I showed up the day Jim Crockett, the promoter, said to be in his office in Charlotte, North Carolina. And as the old cliche goes, the rest is history, right?
Well, absolutely. And I was reading up on it, and he said the only stipulation you had was not to trip over the ropes in your first match or you'd be fired right there. Is that right?
Yeah, well, our conversation on the phone, those were in the days, some of the listeners would go, what? How's that work? Those were in the days where, there were no cell phones. You were taking a selfie and sending it to somebody on a picture. We just had a 5-minute conversation months before I walked into his office. Never had another conversation again until the day I walked into his office, introduced myself. Nikita Koloff is born in the hallways of Charlotte, and we finished hours and hours of interviews. And yes, he said, be in Raleigh, Dorton Arena tomorrow night. You'll wrestle on television. And his instruction, I guess, to Ivan was, if he trips on the ropes, get in the ring, he's out of here. He's history. And I thought, how hard can that be? Well, if you've never been in a wrestling ring, believe me, harder than you think.
Well, I'll tell you, I've walked around him. I've never gotten the squared circle. My first pro wrestling match that I went to, Nikita, was in 1971 up in Marquette, Michigan. I'm an AWA guy from way back, watching you guys all the time, and it was I can remember watching Ivan Putski back when it was before he got lean and mean. He was throwing Hershey's chocolate bars out in the audience with the Crusher. And so I can remember they let me, we walked up after the match and they let us walk up. Here I am, a 6-year-old inside the ring, and man, I loved it. And I was hooked ever since watching.
Wow, that's you have been it. Well, thank you for being such a long time loyal fan of wrestling, man. You have no idea how much I appreciate all those loyal, long-time fans out there.
Well, and I look at some of the guys, Nikita, that you went even to high school with, Rick Rude, Tom Zenk, Kurt Hennig, Barry Darsow. My goodness, people don't realize how much talent you were around with even when you were in high school.
Yeah, surrounded by John Nord the Barbarian, or Nord the Berserker.
That's right.
Yeah, Nord the Berserker, of course, Darsow, Ravasheen, Rick Rude. We were all 5 of us were on the same high school one year.
Wow. That's hilarious. Now, I want to get back to your WCW days. You started out with Uncle Ivan, and you had some, I guess you were back and forth with the NWA and the AWA, wrestling against the Road Warriors. And, man, some of those matches, the Russian chain match, which was a little different than a normal dog collar match. Man, those chains, you had to be strong just to carry those things into the ring, let alone wrestle with those damn things, man. That's awesome.
Well, it is, it was interesting because for a while there, the AWA and NWA, Vern and Jim were running co-promotions kind of, to compete with Vince, with the WWF of its. And so, I'd go up and do television shows for Vern down in Rochester, Minnesota. Did a little angle with Larry Zbyszko, and he wore the heavyweight strap, and then mentioning the Road Warriors and the chain match, and what people don't realize, they're real chains, they're not plastic. And somebody asked me just the other day, have you ever, actually it was one of my grandchildren, my granddaughter, do you have any chipped teeth? And I said, well, as a matter of fact, it only took one link of that chain, to touch some enamel on your tooth and create a chip. And I had plenty of chips on my teeth over the years.
Well, I got to ask you too, another thing that I read, Nikita, and I'm just thoroughly impressed by this, is how you learned to speak Russian fluently to go along with it, and how you had to use that to carry your persona away from the ring. And that to me is just absolutely amazing.
Well, I wouldn't necessarily say fluently, but I did become a student of the language and put a few unknown phrases together. I did learn, certain words like the word for uncle and good night and hello and goodbye and some of those sorts of things. And I guess you'd say enough, and I'll say it this way: to fool the stinking Americans, to fool them. and apparently it worked. I mean, still today, I get people are like, dude, I just figured out you're not from Russia. So apparently it worked.
It must have, man. That's awesome. We're joined by the Russian Nightmare, Nikita Koloff, here on the Captain Lou Extravaganza. Nikita, I think the first time that I spoke with you on social media was I brought up probably one of the two best moments that I can remember. Probably had to be, if not top one, top two moments, is when you teamed up with Dusty in Charlotte, North Carolina, the buzz of the crowd, and you came into the cage match. And I think what fans sometimes these days don't realize, Nikita, is how close, number one, the crowd was to you guys coming into the ring and how you could feed off of that.
Oh, yeah, no, without a doubt. I mean, the energy you did. You fed off the energy in the auditorium. In fact, I was just talking yesterday with one of the Forgotten Sons, Jason Riker, with SmackDown, and I was asking him. I'm like, dude, what's it like to wrestle in an empty arena? I can't even imagine that. And he said it is totally different. And in my mind, I'm like, I don't know how I would have done that. I guess I would have, but that said, yeah, the proximity of the fans, and it's interesting. I just spoke at a drive-in church this past Sunday, and when the pastor was introducing me, I had no idea. He told the story. He said, I've been to 2 live wrestling matches in my lifetime, and I happened to take my family to this event one night at the Coliseum in Charlotte, where Nikita came to Dusty's aid and became a good guy. He was actually there. And
wow.
And I want to tell you, Lou, the way he described it on my introduction, it was like it took me right back to that moment of being in the arena that night. And it's hard to even really honestly put into words or describe, the electricity in the building that evening and what an amazing memory.
Well, I got to tell you, I tell people this all the time. They think I'm crazy, but I was at WrestleMania 3 in the Silverdome because I was going to college about an hour away from there. And when they had all those people in that building, Nikita, it was so loud and so electric. The Detroit Lions will never get that kind of buzz in a building like that. But even when you had fans of 5,000 to 10,000 people loading up a ring, it's just the crowd is so into it. And like you said, I just can't imagine what these guys and gals have to do today with no crowd in the audience.
Yeah, he said it's a challenge, but just kind of try to still just have their mind set on what they want to do and go out and do it. But boy, because it's quite different today as well. I'll just say that for the record, for those listening, if you didn't watch the matches in the 80s and what they call the golden era of wrestling, the back in those days, I mean, when I say we fed off the crowd, see, we went to the ring. There were no scripts for our matches. We went to the ring, and it was an improv. It was spontaneous, and we just developed the match in the ring and pulled the fans into the storyline for the match that night, leading into an outcome. And so there was a real psychology that you needed to have in those days to be able to tell the story to the fan and to pull the fan into the story.
Well, one of the things that I liked about the 80s that, obviously the first thing I liked, and I try not to do this, Nikita, is I don't read the dirt sheets because I still want to be kind of surprised at an outcome of a storyline. The storylines, maybe it's because of the territory days where they were drawn out longer, and I really enjoyed that as opposed to now where, they change so quickly. And it's just, I don't know. I don't know if you feel that way, but I used to like when, a wrestler would go to a different territory and stay there for a year, and all of a sudden, boom, he's back with nobody knowing. And I think it added a little bit to that as well.
Oh, 100%. Listen, I mean, I worked a program. I mean, I did a several month build up to before I ever stepped in the ring against Ric Flair. I mean, dungeon scenes, and we eventually did one pull apart, but I mean, I barely laid my hands on him over a period of, I don't know, let's just say 3 months.
Wow.
Before we ever stepped in the ring for that first ever Great American Bash. And then for the next 5-6 months, we went all over the country, in return matches. I mean, you talk about taking your time and building a story. That's what we did. And I'll borrow a scene from the Archie Bunker show for those who might be old enough to remember that show. There was a scene, I never saw it, but I heard there was a scene in that show where he's actually watching pro wrestling on television, and his son-in-law, Meathead, walks in. He goes, what do you know, Auntie? He goes, they know who's going to win. He turns around, and his response to Meathead was, well, maybe they know, but I don't, so shut up and let me watch it.
100%. I love it. Absolutely.
Right?
Oh,
Isn't
my
that
God.
good?
That's great. Oh, that's awesome, man. That is hilarious. So let's go to 1986 again. That was the year that culminated with you and Dusty teaming up. But, boy, you had such a great run with Magnum TA, and I know that accident that he had was so unfortunate. But to me, I think 1986 was the golden year of professional wrestling because I really thought WCW or NWA was hitting its stride, Nikita, and you had some great storylines in there with the Horsemen and the Great American Bash and all of that. Just a fun time of year, and that run you had going up against Magnum TA was excellent.
Well, it is probably, for sure, without a doubt, the most brought up conversation I have when, whether I'm out there doing Legends autograph signings or, making appearances in wrestling events, even recently with the NWA Power with Billy Corgan and others, Dave Lagana and the group there, the gang there. Wherever I go, running into whether it's current wrestlers or even, guys from my day. I mean, the fans, that's what they talk about probably for sure the most. And, Terry and I had some great chemistry with each other, very similar working styles. I would call it snug. Somebody else might call it stiff. But that said, Magnum and I were in agreement together that when the fans walked out of the arena, in fact, I literally, Lou, had fans say this, or I've heard, later on, I don't know about any of those other matches, but that match with Nikita and Magnum was real, but that was our goal, he and I. That's what we wanted to portray. And then the best of 7 was absolute brilliance. Credit the American Dream, Dusty Rhodes, the power to be foul, if you will. Yeah. Credit the American Dream, his creation, his idea, and all these years later, we're still talking about it.
He was born the son of a plumber, you understand. Is that right?
That's what I'm saying, baby, from Austin, Texas. Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome, man. That is so cool. One of the things I wanted to ask you, everybody thought, they always think of the glorious side of wrestling, but boy, you guys were out, even back then, Nikita, 250 to 300 days a year, doing sometimes one show, if not 2 a day. I mean, How were you able to do it physically, man?
Well, interestingly enough, you brought up the year 1986. In 1986, I had 454 matches. Do the math on that.
Wow. That is
right.
insane.
It is insane. And how we did it was, it was a mindset. You didn't really think, oh, I got to have all these. It was just, what's the next town? And, and of course for me, I had a routine. I ate well. I worked out every day. I was in the gym a couple hours every day.
Wow.
Whether we were driving or flying, I had kind of just a routine down, and it was a grind, to use a modern day term, but you just did it. And in fact, if you took we had like 8 days off, right before Christmas, right? But we always knew we were back Christmas Day, afternoon in Charlotte, the evening in the Omni in Atlanta for Christmas, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it was almost like you dreaded the 8-day break, and that was, by the way, the only break we got all year. It was almost like you dreaded that because your body gets. It's almost like your hands getting calloused. Your body kind of gets calloused in a sense for all the bumps and slams and suplex, and you just go. You just do it. And when you come back off a break, you're sore for 2, 3, 4 days until you get back into that groove again.
Now, I got to ask you a question. When you were out on the road and, in the 80s or whatnot, was it true that you were not allowed to be out in public with, for example, the Four Horsemen when you and Dusty were against them, or when you were against Magnum TA? You weren't allowed to be with them. You had to be separate from them. Is that true?
Well, so old school mentality. Now, let me just preface it by saying this. There were, yes, but I want to give you a little more insight into that. I mean, even to the degree that if we even trained at different gyms. I mean, they didn't even Crockett, and we weren't. He didn't really. He preferred that we didn't even work out at the same gym, or even if we were on the road and we walked into the gym and Magnum was already in there, and we were like, dang, I'd leave. I mean, I'd leave and wait a couple hours, come back and work out later. Just to maintain the integrity of the business. Now, I say that to say, there were times there were guys who, maybe a car broke down, or sometimes good guy, bad guy had to ride to the town together, and but even then, usually they like drop you off a block away, and you'd walk up with your bag, and we really did the most we could. Most of the guys, now some guys didn't care. I mean, they'd walk into a convenience store together or whatever. But the majority of the guys really respected the business enough to protect it that way.
Well, it looked like you guys really respected the business back in the 80s. I mean, it just everything looked believable. And it was, I know that's kind of a bad term to use, but it really did look that way. And what I wanted to ask you, the different styles, how hard was it, Nikita, to work a program with the likes of maybe the Rock and Roll Express, and then turn around and work with the Road Warriors or the Four Horsemen? I mean, was it difficult to adapt to the different types of teams that you ended up wrestling against?
That's a great question. I mean, the road, certainly there's, if you take the Road Warriors and the Rock and Roll Express, just for example, obviously there's going to be two different style matches. Okay. I was kind of on equal par with the Road Warriors. So I was kind of our team. I was the strong man. Ivan was more of the bump guy. And although he did feats of strength stuff, but he was older. And so, he'd be the one to, take the fall or take the bump. And I'd be the strong man. And so we kind of match up that way with them, and really in a sense, the same with the Rock and Roll Express, where, I didn't typically go off my feet a lot with any of them. It was the character building this monster of a character that nobody could defeat.
Mm-hmm.
And so the Rock World Express, it may take both of them giving me a if you will, a double drop kick for me to take a bump versus the Road Warriors giving me a drop kick and one of them and maybe staggering back. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, absolutely. That's I understand it totally. It just that's something that always fascinated me. Like, I mean, I know obviously you knew who you were going to wrestle before the program started, but in case you went from wrestling a Dusty Rhodes to Ricky, a Ricky Morton or whatever, and then how you had to adapt on the fly. And I'm always fascinated how you guys communicate in the ring together, and how you could put a match together, especially back then. While you're doing it inside the squared circle.
Yeah, it's fun. That's what I'm saying. Spontaneously. I don't know how many fans, of course, modern day fans probably don't even wrap their head around there or realize that. But yeah, 100%. And sometimes it was verbal communication. Sometimes it was non-verbal communication. I mean, when you're working a program with a guy for 6 months, as you're into it, you don't even have to verbalize certain things. It's just nonverbal communication because you work so well with each other. You can almost can sense or know what's coming next and anticipate it, and just go out and execute it. And that was the big difference versus a whole match being written out and not taking nothing away from the modern guys today. But I mean, we weren't getting to the arenas 9 hours early. We were showing up an hour before the matches, strapping up our boots, going out and giving the fans the best show on earth.
Well, and you did quite a job, I have to say that, Nikita. Before I let you go, please tell us what you're up to these days with your ministry. I know you're very involved with it. I'm very fascinated by that. Please tell us a little bit about what you're doing today.
I appreciate it, Lou, and I appreciate you having me on tonight. I really do. And so, kind of fast forward, leaving the wrestling world. And let me just say this: if people want to see more of the story, read more of the story, there's different ways you can do that. There's books out there. My latest book was called Nikita: A Tale of the Ring and Redemption. It has my whole life story in it, and a couple of the books I wrote, Breaking the Chains and Wrestling with Success. I'm working on a new book currently, and so there's books out there. The website, Koloff.org. You can read some more of the story there. You can follow me on social media, on Twitter, Instagram, Nikita Koloff with the number 1 behind it. Facebook. If you find me on Facebook, the real me on Facebook, you'll find me standing in the middle of a river. And Lou, I don't know if you have seen this, but I'm standing in the middle of a river, and there's someone who a lot of folks would know. The $1 Million Man, Ted DiBiase, is standing in there with me. And then a friend of ours, Jason Sanderson. We're actually in the Jordan River in Israel, taking turns baptizing each other.
Wow.
And and so that's the real me on Facebook. If you want to find me there, shoot me emails, whatever, to my website or whatever. And then I do travel the world. I left wrestling 11 months later. Found myself at an altar, giving my life to Jesus. And the next thing I knew, just within a few years, launched into essentially full-time ministry. Like I said, I still go out and do autograph signings, and I'm still mixed up in the wrestling world. But the primary thing I do is travel and around the world, now to all 50 states and 30 different countries so far. And last year, Lex Luger and I, we've been not only tag team partners in the ring and opponents against each other, but a few years back we tagged up for ministry, and him and I launched a men's camp last year. It's just called Man Camp. People can go on, guys can go on mancamp.info and get more information on that. And if there's pastors out there listening, or, whatever community you might be in, and we're interested in having me come and share the gospel, the good news, that's my heart and passion now, just not only sharing my story, but sharing sharing the gospel and preaching the word of God. So that's a quick note of what I'm doing, Lou.
Well, it sounds like you are doing quite a bit, Nikita, and again, this has been an absolute treat for me to have you on and talking 80s wrestling. Before I let you go, I promise this is it. With all my guests that we've been talking about the other sports in the 70s and the 80s, I always ask this question, so I'm going to ask you, what was your favorite arena that you ever performed in?
Great question. I guess the first one that comes to mind is the Baltimore Arena, the Inner Harbor of Baltimore, and the Baltimore Arena when Dusty and we had the 2-day tag team tournament for the Jim Crockett Cup, Memorial Cup, and Dusty and I, of course, 1987, walked away with the cup, and we spent several days in Baltimore. Loved the Inner Harbor, Sabatino's Italian restaurant in Little Italy there outside of Baltimore. And I'll say this too, one other quick thought.
Mm-hmm.
That was one highlight. Another highlight of Baltimore, Jim Crockett booked Ric Flair and I in a World Heavyweight title match in 2 towns on the same night.
Wow.
Richmond, Virginia, and Baltimore, Maryland. He figured we could wrestle early in the Richmond card and still make it in time to Baltimore and wrestle there. Well, we did. However, the show started at 8 in Baltimore. We didn't get into the arena till after 10 p.m. They literally had a cage match scheduled. We were running so late. They put up the cage. The Road Warriors had a cage match, took down the cage. Ric Flair and I stepped in that arena at 12 midnight.
Really?
And him and I wrestled for 55 minutes until 12:55 in the morning. Those fans were there from 7 p.m. till 1 a.m. and they never sat down. They were on their feet almost the entire match, which is one of the reasons I love the fans of Baltimore as well as many other towns.
Wow, that is a great story to leave on, Nikita. Hey, again, thank you so much for joining us tonight. Next time you're coming to Michigan, let me know. Send me a note. I'd love to meet you. And when your next book is ready to be published, give me a shout, and we'll make sure to let everybody know.
Hey, I appreciate it. Hey, I got a ton of friends in Michigan, all over Grand Rapids and all over that way, and some over in Detroit. So I do get up to Michigan. So Captain Lou,
yes,
thank
sir.
you for having me on, my friend, and to all the listeners out there, God bless you. Stay safe, and hopefully I'll get to meet you one day. If not in the wrestling arena and an autograph signing, I'll get to meet you in a church service somewhere. Thank you, Lou.
You bet. Thank you, Nikita. We'll talk to you soon.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Nikita Koloff, the Russian Nightmare. Wow, what a treat. Man, now that brings back a lot of great memories of the 80s. Professional wrestling, the golden age. I can still remember that night, as I told him. Coming into Charlotte, North Carolina, him and Dusty, you didn't know back then. You didn't have the dirt sheets. You didn't know who was going to be wrestling when. I mean, you knew it was going to be on the card, but that was his mystery partner. And it just, when I first heard about it and they showed the highlights, you could hear the crowd just chanting his name, Nakita, Nakita. And it was, oh my goodness, I got chills thinking about it. This is great. Anyways, thanks to Nikita Koloff for coming on the show, and what a joy to talk to. We're going to step aside, and we're going to get the voice of Minneapolis coming up here shortly. That'll be Jeff Disher. We're going to talk Last Dance here on the Captain Lou Extravaganza. Don't go anywhere.
Nothing makes us happier at Lexington Law than when our clients cancel our services. Listen to this client call and see what we mean.
Lexington Law Firm, this is Erin.
I would like to cancel my account.
I'm sorry to hear that.
No, don't be. Actually, you guys have done tremendous work for me, and I was working with you for several years now. And my goal was to get a mortgage written by the end of this year, and I just got that mortgage commitment.
That is wonderful.
My credit went from like 440 working with you guys to 700.
Nice.
And I got a very good 4.25% 30-year fixed rate mortgage. I have nothing at all bad to say. If you ever want me to write a testimonial, well, I will. As a matter of fact, I've recommended you to a lot of friends.
Lexington Law has served over 500,000 clients, taking expert action on their credit that has led to the removal of millions of questionable negative items from their credit reports. Call now and learn more about how Lexington Law may be able to help you in the removal of negative items from your credit report, such as collections, late payments, charge-offs, and many others. Call Lexington Law today.
And welcome back to the Captain Lou Extravaganza Live here on the 12-Ounce Sports Network. Again, thanks to Nikita Koloff, the Hall of Famer of the NWA Hall of Fame 2007. I forgot to mention that, inducted. So always what a treat to be able to talk to him. Now we're going to get another treat as we go back to Nikita's stomping grounds, the Minneapolis area, with the likes of Kurt Hennig and Tom Zenk and the Barbarian, and also our next guest, Jeff Disher. Jeff, thanks for jumping on and taking some time out with us tonight. How are you?
I am vertical, Louie, and to sort of piggyback off of Nikita, if I can, I'd love to get his view on the stadium show, or not the stadium show, excuse me, the studio shows that NWA are doing now with Jim Cornette and company. So maybe that's something to approach when you next have him on.
Definitely will. So we have you on tonight. The Last Dance. We'll start with The Last Dance. The last two parts of the documentary are over. 9 and 10. I don't know. To me, Jeff, it was a little anticlimactic. I expected a little more sizzle from it, but we all knew who was going to win the games, I guess. But I came away with it, though, I guess feeling a little better about Michael Jordan. And to me, if he's not the top player of all time, with all due respect to LeBron James, I don't know. I love his tenacity and his win-at-all-cost mentality.
I agree. I do agree with you. And in episode 9, we got a chance to sort of pull back the curtain on Steve Kerr a little bit, and the episode dove into, I should say, the relationship that he had with his father, and how Malcolm, the unfortunate story of how Malcolm was killed in Beirut. And so Steve and Michael were able to bond their lives, and I think both of them not only understood each other off the court, but could play better with that mutual understanding on court as well.
Well, I have to say that what I liked about Michael Jordan is he realized again with that he could defer to Steve Kerr in '97, but I just I don't know. I had a better sense for Michael Jordan after 9 and 10. I still don't feel any better about Scottie Pippen. I still will go to my grave saying that he is not one of the top 50 players of all time.
I see both sides of that argument, and I'm not going to attempt to go one way or the other on it. But Pippen, Kerr, Rodman, Jordan, as well as Luke Longley, made those teams. Now, episode, I believe it was early in 10, I think it was, dove into the worm and and it was focused on the finals. So episode 10 actually focused in part on Rodman and his unexcused absence from the Bulls during the height of the finals, so that he could go off in your neck of the woods at the Palace of Auburn Hills and wrestle with Hulk Hogan in a WCW card, or on a WCW card that would ratchet up the run to, I think it was Bash at the Beach, when you had Rodman Rodman and Karl Malone wrestle with Hulk and
I think it was
goodness.
Diamond Dallas Page, I think, was his
Yes.
partner. And I got to tell you, Jeff, just as a side note, I can remember watching that show live, and I'm thinking, what in the heck is Dennis Rodman doing on wrestling? And I'm thinking, wait a minute here. And all of a sudden, he come out of there, and I'm thinking, what? Only Dennis Rodman could get away with it. And it goes back to this documentary, Jeff, is I still say that he had a special bond with Phil Jackson because Phil Jackson was that kind of a free spirit back when he played back with the Knicks back in the 70s.
Yes. And I think that bond that Jackson and the Worm had allowed Rodman to do all of these things on the side. And I don't want you taking that out of context. But it allowed him to wrestle, and WCW actually profited off of the 98 or the 97 and 98 NBA Finals, if you think about it, because of Karl Malone and Dennis Rodman's hatred for each other. Just look at the way Game 6 turned out.
Yeah, I know, and they slapped each other on the ass in that one game, but it just goes to show you, not to detract away from the NBA, but how much of a marketing genius Eric Bischoff was and TNT was by incorporating them. And, hey, like they said, they took advantage of Dennis Rodman, letting him be the wayward wanderer, if you will, and the showman that he was.
And to this, and going through the 10 episodes, he's still the showman. Look at all that Jason Hare had to do to get Rodman to focus during the interview process. It from all accounts, it was Herculean journey just to get Rodman to focus and answer the questions that the production team all had for him.
Well, okay, now let's fast forward to, we'll kind of bounce back and forth a little bit, but I want to ask you this question. After they won their 6th championship, do you honestly believe that there was any possibility that they were going to get together for a run at number 7? Because I don't.
99. I think that I think that Krause's comments at the start of the season, where he says Phil Jackson won't be the head coach of the Bulls after the 98 season ends, sort of diluted the water a little bit, and it's sort of served as a lack of inspiration for the Fab Five, if the University of Michigan will let me use that, to get together in 1999 and fight for 7. So no, I don't buy. I'm selling the idea that the group wanted to get back together in 1999.
Well, and I also think that the person, in my opinion, too, that it just seems like he got away with maybe not taking a lot of heat was Reinsdorf. I mean, wouldn't you think that if he really wanted those guys back on, if they wanted back for one more run? Now, I understand there was salary cap issues, and Scottie Pippen wanted his money. He held out for his surgery because he wasn't getting paid and they wouldn't renegotiate. But to me, that all falls on Reinsdorf. I think if he had any gumption, he would have fired Jerry Krause and said, hey, you know what? What is it going to take? Am I going to pay you $10,000 or $12,000 a year, that being Phil Jackson, or what? And I think if he would have came, I think Jordan might have, but that whole cast, no, I don't think they would have all came back.
I do agree with you. And I mentioned Game 6 earlier. NBA Entertainment has all sorts of cinematic material from that game, and ESPN will show Game 6 in what they're calling a cinematic production, which will have NBC's regular broadcast commentary with Bob Costas, Isaiah Thomas, and Matt Gukas, but it won't be the NBC video necessarily so much as it will be outside video produced by NBA Entertainment. And you all can catch that at 9 p.m. Eastern Time tomorrow night, which will follow a re-air of Last Dance 9 and Last Dance 10.
So overall, going back to the first year they played Utah. Okay, I'm going to ask you the $1 million question. Was it food poisoning, or are you going to go with the conspiracy theory that he went out with Robert Redford or took a junket to Vegas?
Screw conspiracy theories. I don't want to even know what toppings he had on that pie, but man,
boy,
I do believe it was food poisoning. If many of you didn't catch my drift there.
Oh, I believe it was too, and it just shows to the greatness, Jeff, of how well he played, and it's just. I want to go to that, but I also, again, go back to that killer mentality of his, that he found, what was it, Russell for Utah, used him as motivation. And then, of course, Karl Malone getting the MVP, using that for motivation. I mean, just the way he digs down to get that and just uses it to such great advantage.
And I also noted a pretty funny moment at the end of episode 9 where Jordan, after winning the 97 title in Game 6, and Larry Bird no, I'm sorry, this is the Eastern Conference final, actually.
Yes. Yep.
Where Larry Bird and Jordan are embracing on the event level at, I believe it was Market Square Arena back in those days. But he said something, and I forget the exact words he used. I know there were 2 expletives in there, so I won't repeat those because FCC. However, the camaraderie that Jordan and Bird showed after a battle, or after the battle that took place there, is unrivaled. You wouldn't see that in today, or see that sort of spirit in today's game, because players in today's game mostly are about themselves.
Right. No, I agree 100% on that, Jeff. I want to get your comment. There was a story out tonight, it was actually late this afternoon. Horace Grant now is upset with Michael Jordan, saying he lied, calling him a snitch and all that. And I think it's apropos, because you can say what you want about, and I still believe this, the reason that Michael Jordan hates Isaiah is not because he didn't shake his hand. It's because Isaiah just pounded the crap out of him for 4 years before they finally got over the hump. But I love it. It's poetic justice for Horace Grant calling, Detroit a bunch of bitches when, Detroit had his number, and now he's got, he's called out and he's backing off, and he's the one being the B.
That's like, to me, and I'm reading the story you're referring to. I feel sort of like a bit of sour grapes in terms of Horace Grant's reaction to the documentary as a whole. If it wasn't for Michael Jordan in those early days, along with, I believe we go back to, oh dear Lord, I'm having to go into my bank here. If you go back to the days where just after Charles Oakley left the team for New York, Bill Cartwright, etc. If it wasn't for Jordan and those guys, Horace Grant wouldn't have had the career that he did.
You're absolutely right. And for him to sit there and do that, if it wasn't for Jordan, he wouldn't have the bank account that he's got now. And, I see where Scottie Pippen hasn't spoken publicly about since this documentary. He's upset about it, you know. And I look at Scottie Pippen, you know, and let me say this real quick. Yes, he's a good ball player. Now, I still don't think he should have been on the Dream Team in '92. You know, I don't think he quite got to that point of being the superstar, but he was with Michael Jordan, so I understand why he's on there. I didn't like it, and I don't agree with it, but I understand it. But he's made his bed, especially when he didn't go in the game 6 there. I think it was against the Giants, the Knicks, in that, or game 2 or whatever it was, where Kukoc bailed him out, hitting that 3-pointer. That's going to follow Pippen his whole life. And, you know, I think he's mad because Michael Jordan brought it to light and he was upset with them.
Well, you just spoke about Pippen bailing a player out. How about when Pippen goes down in the '98 finals?
Yeah.
And I mean, granted, we're talking different types of fruit because Scottie made an effort to play in those final 10 minutes despite the back spasms.
Mm-hmm.
However, MJ still had to bail him out.
And that he definitely did.
I agree. And I do also just want to say that the viewership is in from Sunday night, 5.9 million viewers for both episodes.
That's amazing, and there's definitely a reason why it was pushed ahead, and I totally understand why. So, you know, I want to ask you this. LeBron James came out, I think yesterday or this morning or whatever, and made his comments how he claims that he would have been more of a Scottie Pippen to Michael Jordan than to be on equal level. He would have liked to have been in that role. He said they'd have been unbeatable. Well, no kidding. If they played together like that, they'd have been unbeatable. But I feel bad for LeBron in this sense because he's always going to be compared to Michael. Always. Fair or unfair.
That's because of LeBron's greatness, and that's something I'm not going to argue.
Right.
However, Jordan being one of the best players in the game, if not the best player of all time, or the GOAT, is something that you can't argue because of the eras in which MJ and LeBron played or have played in.
Well, you know, and that's why I'm always going to throw Kareem in the top 2 or 3. And I know people are thinking, what? But Kareem was so dominant in the 70s. What was it? 6 MVPs. You know, he was a game changer when he started out in Milwaukee. Then he went to L.A., played until 1989, and, you know, he was a force even then. You know, and it's funny because I always remember what Wilt Chamberlain said. He when he talked to Michael Jordan, he said, back when you came in, that's when they changed the rules, or maybe it was the late 70s. That's when they changed the rules so guys like me couldn't dominate. And then in the 90s, they changed the rules so guys like you could dominate. And I'll never forget that. And that's why I got to give Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, I still say he's my number 2 guy. LeBron, to me, has not quite gotten to be in the top 2 in my book. I'll put him at a very strong 3.
Agreed. And you remember back to the 92 Olympics and that hard-fought practice game game from the practice where Magic was basically just commenting on Michael being Michael, and Michael said something to the effect of, "It's still the 90s."
Yeah.
It speaks to the changes that the NBA has made over the years because the game was different in the 90s versus back when Kareem played and Magic Johnson played to what it is now with LeBron, Stephen Curry, etc., and so forth. The game has evolved, and if you remember back to what David Stern said late in episode 10, is that the NBA wouldn't have the popularity that it has now if it wasn't for Michael Jordan. And I believe they were in a double-digit number of countries back in the early 90s, pre-Michael Jordan, and now it's up over 200. I forget the exact numbers.
240. That's a very good point. And he definitely was the trendsetter back then, and he set the stage. Magic and Larry saved the NBA in 1980, and Michael just literally took the ball and ran with it. And with his Nike endorsements, he was ahead of his time. And and I give him all the credit in the world for that too. And I think LeBron, he learned from that. And has LeBron taken it to another level with his film producing and everything? Probably. But I just think that Michael Jordan was just such a innovator on more than just on the court as well as off the court.
Well, can I make one more point real quickly?
Yeah.
Flashing back to Game 6 in '98 and the shot. If you watch the game on YouTube, and I'm talking about the broadcast version of the game, which you can easily find with a search term, the broadcast camera doesn't necessarily show that Michael pushed off or he stepped around Brian Russell. And keep in mind, Russell nor Karl Malone were interviewed as a part of the documentary. They both declined. Okay, as did and actually, I can't make that comparison to Peter Vesey like we tried earlier in this last month or so, because Vesey simply wasn't approached. Anyway, from that game camera, which is the one on the concourse that you get with both hockey and basketball, you cannot determine whether Michael pushed off or not. And one referee, or one of the officials, was also screened by players in front of him, and the two others knew in the final minute at least to hold their whistles as to not affect the outcome of the game.
Well, yeah, they learned from 1988 when they called that phantom foul on Bill Laimbeer against Jabbar. Detroit would have won 3 straight. So yeah, they swallow their whistles. Jeff, I digress. I honestly don't think that was a push-off. I really don't. I mean, it was very close, but I don't think it was.
I agree with you. And I haven't seen anything that The Last Dance showed or what NBC showed in its actual broadcast that would suggest it was a push-off. Now, I'm intrigued to watch tomorrow night when the cinematic version of the game will air to see if anything can change my mind on it. But I wrote a Facebook post last night after episode 10 that said, Isaiah Thomas claimed that MJ pushed off. Oh, and in capital letters, I'd say, of course he'd say that. And I go back to the rocky relationship that the two had off the court with the 92 Dream Team example that we've talked about, and Isaiah walking off the court in 1991 too.
Well, I believe so. Well, Jeff, I got to leave it there. We're just about up against it. Thanks again, as always, for coming on. Next time we have you on, hopefully we're talking a little more definitive on baseball starting back up and hopefully basketball and hockey. Thanks again, as always, for taking time out tonight.
Looking forward to talking to you again, man.
All right. Thanks, Jeff Disher. Dish in the Box, his Twitter handle is. And we thank him, as always, for joining us here on the show tonight. Wow, what a great show tonight. Again, a lot going on in the world of the ACHA hockey with Craig Barnett, the executive director of the ACHA, joining us here tonight. And 30th year of ACHA hockey starting this next year when they get going, and I just got a good feeling it's going to start on time or real darn close. I want to thank Mark Van Vliet for joining us at 8:30 tonight. Some great stories on Olympia Stadium and going over to the Boston Garden. Man, I love hearing those stories because it just brings back memories of my childhood, listening to them on the radio and watching it on TV. You know, it's fun for me to hear these because I live so far away from the from Detroit or Minneapolis or Milwaukee or whatever, not being able to just hop down the street and go to the games. It's always fun to get a perspective of somebody going to those games back in the day. Jeff Disher talking about The Last Dance with his perspective on it. It was a great documentary. I got to give him credit. And Michael Jordan, what I like about him is there's no phoniness about him. Now, is he telling the truth about 100% everything? Probably not. But you can tell it's just how he is. There's no phoniness. And he genuinely believes he's the best. And, because the way he reacts when people say they might have had a chance at him, and he just laughs at them. And I kind of like that. I'm not big on arrogant people. I'm really not. And I think our society nowadays is, if you are arrogant, it's okay as long as you can back it up. I just don't like that. But it was funny to watch him because he was so consistent. And even at the end, I think it was of episode 7, when he did kind of get emotional when people were expecting too much or whatever. And he acted like, it bothered him that people thought that way. But he's never going to change. And that's why I think he's still upset with Isaiah. And, he at least will talk about him now and say how he respects his game. He hates him, but he respected his game. And I give him credit for that. And, of course, getting to talk to Nikita Koloff tonight, what a fun conversation with him. Talking about his wrestling back in the 80s with, with the likes of Dusty Rhodes, and that Ric Flair story where they wrestled 2 times in one night, and one of them not starting till after midnight is absolutely incredible. And it just shows you what they did. Showing up, an hour before the show starts, strapping on the boots and whatnot, the trunks, and getting in there. It's like he said, they don't show up 9 hours early, and I don't want me to sound like, the old man, get off my porch type of thing. But, the storytelling, I still say back then was superior to what it is now. Obviously, it's a different dynamic, and I love the build of the storylines from back in the territorial days where they went 6 months. And it's like he said, a lot of times they did the promos and they did work before they even getting in the ring. And I think that's what's different than what it is now. But what a great conversation with Nikita Koloff. Had an absolute blast, and look forward to hopefully having him on again in the future here on the Captain Lou Extravaganza. Well, hey, that's going to do it tonight. What a great show. Had a lot of fun, man. This 2 hours just flew by, as it always does, especially when I have you, the listener and the viewer, watching us here on the show. Don't forget, you can listen to a record. We'll be on SoundCloud and iTunes within 24 hours, so you can check out any of those interviews if you might have missed them here tonight. And again, we encourage you to check out all of our shows here on the 12 Ounce Sports Network that are taped. They're on SoundCloud. And wherever you find your podcast, just look up 12 Ounce Sports and then hit the Captain Lou Extravaganza. We've got some great interviews over the past couple of years, so I want to thank everybody for checking us out. Well, again, till next week, we'll be on again Tuesday night from 8 until 10 p.m. This is Captain Lou saying, keep your head up, keep your sticks down, keep your feet moving, and as always, keep your minds open. Good night, everybody. Thanks for joining us here on the Captain Lou Extravaganza here on the 12